Yeah, that's right. It's just setting up for the recording on YouTube. So as soon as we are live,
Yes, we are live now. Meeting is now live
yes,
on
we
YouTube.
can all act decent and
I have been there once before where a Zoom meeting got hacked and it was not a pretty sight.
wow. Okay, so Tony ji, I'm going to be on speaker view throughout because I think Devang ji, please let me know if the view on YouTube is fine. And we're very happy. I think Peter has also joined us, Tim, our past speaker from ILM.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
That doesn't look like Peter.
that's Grace. I think.
Yeah.
Actually, it's Grace here.
Yeah, that's Grace.
Grace.
That's his wife.
Hi, Grace. Hi, Grace. Welcome.
Hello. He will
Great.
join us in a bit. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely, lovely to have you on the session too. Okay, so Tony ji, you keep admitting the new participants, and
I've got an eye on that. Don't worry about that.
we are live on YouTube now. So great. So Tim, I'm all set to start. Tony ji, I think we will get started. Lot of
Yes, please go ahead.
students, professionals from all over have joined us. So as usual, I would request all participants to quickly type out on the chat whether they are students, professionals. So let Tim also take a look so he knows who he is speaking with today.
Actually, he's one of our lecturers.
So you can.
Then they
And
can
yes.
marvel at all the preparation I put into this to make sure it's targeted directly for you.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we are seeing students. Okay, all of you, I would request you to student from Jaipur, Rajasthan. So different parts of the country, Tim, within India and abroad.
You know, I've never been to India as well. That would be fantastic. I was in conversations about coming to India to be a guest speaker at a festival before COVID. So
Wow.
I was looking forward to adding India to my list of places I've been to visit. And I've done a lot of traveling, especially the last few years in the animation world, but not India yet. So COVID
Lovely.
took that away from me until today.
Yes, yes. We have a lot of senior friends, stop motion animators, digital 3D, 2D animators, lots of professionals and students.
Fantastic.
Wow. And we have Peter saying we have a lecturer from Singapore here with us. Lovely. We know who it is. Okay. Okay. So welcome everyone. I think Tony ji, we'll start it off.
Yes, please go ahead with the introduction, and
So-
you can lead Tim into the show.
Yes.
And people can send their questions on the chat, and we'll moderate those questions. And we have a couple of us moderating the session on YouTube as well, so we may get questions from there as well.
Right.
And request those of you who can please switch on your cameras. It's nice to put a face to your name.
Yes.
The more
And we have
difficult, embarrassing the questions, the better.
we have Tawheed joining us from Bangladesh, and we have a CG generalist from Singapore. So it's a lovely, lovely bunch over here. So okay, good evening, everyone. Once again, on behalf of the Animation Society of India, it's a very, very informal and interactive chat session, talk session, interactive. You can all pour in your questions for Tim, and we are extremely happy to have Tim Allen with us. He's a veteran, senior stop motion animator. And the best part, I feel so amazing, knowing this, that he's worked on all the amazing stop motion projects that, we've seen, be it Peter and the Wolf, the Oscar winning film, the Zucchini, Life as a Zucchini, right, Tim?
Yeah.
There is Corpse Bride with Tim Burton, Isle of Dogs with Wes Anderson, of course, Aardman Studios, the television format, Creature Comfort episodes, Shaun the Sheep, Frankenweenie again, and I think such beautiful and such variety of films. Tim, I'm extremely curious how you manage to be at the right place every time. The right time, right place, interacting with so many wonderful people. And apart from the professional work, I think Tim also does a lot of his own independent work in stop motion. He also teaches. He conducts workshops for children, for corporates, with education institutes. So we are very, very happy, Tim. Welcome, and the stage is all yours. So happy that you're here to share. And Tim has his entire he has his PC with all the info there, so make the best use of it. He has so much stuff to share with us today. So Tim, welcome once again, and all over to you.
Thank you. It's weird actually. I was thinking when you started your introduction with the word veteran, which is it's funny because we're obviously going to talk about some of my early stuff and how I got started, and you asked about how these opportunities come together. It's very strange seeing how things gradually change, because I still remember very clearly desperately trying to get my first job and be taken seriously, or proving myself despite failures and rejections. And then over the years, things do very, very gradually change. From you're not the new person in the room, there's a few other new people in the room.
Right.
And then more and more years go by, and then suddenly you're one of the most experienced people in the room. And then you realize, oh, it's now been 21 years since my first stop motion professional job. So that doesn't count all the student time. So
and what you said about things changing very, very slowly sounds so similar to stop motion. Yeah, it's the nature of our work.
Yeah, you could probably watch a time lapse of my whole career, and being animation, it would last about 10 seconds. I could watch my life in one blip.
How to be a veteran in 10 seconds.
Goodness, yes. Well, and we'll talk about the teaching in more detail too, but that really, that was like a side career. It was just a couple of talks to begin with, and then some teaching at university. And then before you know it, I've been teaching for about, depends when you start, but I'm going to say 18 years. And so many of my students or graduates, they've been in the industry for more than a decade now, and they're directors or producers or own their own companies or have worked on lots of other feature films. And it's a little bit, it's a lot to think about in terms of, I've seen so much variety. I think when I look back over my life, it will be the fact that I've had a lot of variety with my work, where I've traveled, who I've worked with, and different ways that I apply myself. And we'll cover some of it. And just to, just to reiterate what you said in your intro about asking questions, I have been keeping examples of animation, like tests, auditions, failed bits of animation, since I started teaching, because I use them as examples. So I've now got about 18 years worth of examples I can show to demonstrate things. So if I can answer questions visually, I will happily give that a go as well.
Lovely. So Tim, that 10 seconds, if you rewind, where did it start? Like how did you, like, were you always sure about stop motion? Because it's such a specialized and also a tough medium, there's no undo. Right. So were you always clear that, you're fascinated with stop motion? Like, what were your early influences?
I don't think I realized that I was, because it honestly didn't occur to me you could do that for a career. When I was very young, I was always drawing. As long as we can remember, I was picking up a pencil and drawing cartoons, and I was very inspired by British comics like the Beano and the Dandy, or Garfield. I loved the Garfield comic strips, even the ones in the paper that were just 3 panels long. So I think at the age of 10, 11, 12, my ambition might have been I was doing a version of Garfield that I wanted to get in the papers that was with a vampire and a ghost and Halloween style.
So your version of Garfield.
Yeah, it was a blatant rip-off, but I was probably out of respect, I was emulating it. And my mum really, really encouraged me to do creative things. We'd go to a department store for coffee, and me and my brother would enter a Lego competition, or my mum would dress me and my brother up for the local carnival as space aliens or whatever it was that year. She was always trying to get us involved in community activities and involved in creative things. She'd often try and get a lot of my little cartoons sent to the local newspaper to be,
Oh, wow.
because they had a thing called Cartoon Corner,
Wow.
where you could, every week, as a weekly local newspaper, they would take some young child's cartoon and they'd publish it. And you get, I don't remember, it's probably something like £5 voucher to spend in the stationery store.
Tim, which city was this?
Sorry?
Which city was this?
Oh, I grew up in a place called Fleet. It's quite a small town. It's a commuter town to London. It's
Okay.
about 50 minutes out of London. And I had a lot of problems with my hip when I was younger. I was in hospital for quite a while, and I was in bed quite a bit, reading comics and doing drawings, while I learned to walk again. But it was a good thing that I could just carry on drawing, which was my passion, and carry on reading comics. So my mum really, really encouraged me to get involved with community, get involved in creative competitions. She really encouraged that. And when I was starting to become a teenager, then I was getting into Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics. And I was thinking more about drawing comics for a living, but my knowledge of anatomy really wasn't good enough. So coming back to stop motion, clearly there was a lot of creativity, but I didn't see stop motion as a thing that was an option. I didn't know, and back then you really couldn't do degrees in animation. They weren't, they're very, very rare in the UK. But I was very into one of my earliest memories of TV was Shaun and the Wheelies, which is a program by Cosgrove Hall, and it's Barry Purvis's first animation when he started at Cosgrove. And then they went on and did Wind in the Willows, and I loved the Willows feature film. And I'd come home from school and I had to catch the latest episode of Wind in the Willows, the TV program. And we couldn't afford a video player. So I used all my VHS money to buy a video player for the family, from doing the paper round or something. And yeah, some of the stop motion things I was really into were Postman Pat, Wind in the Willows, Shaun and the Wheelies. And then by the time I was leaving school and becoming an art, we decided I must do art. We didn't know what I'd do after school or what it would be, but 100% art. So I did a 2-year art and design BTEC, 2 years dedicated learning all the principles of color, perspective, composition. I didn't know what I was doing or where I was taking this, but it was art. And I was getting more into 3 dimensions. I preferred not really so much sculpture, but anything physical was clear. And I also, around that time, Nightmare Before Christmas came out, and I was huge on that. I had the behind the scenes book, which I still have actually. And I've been through it so much using it for my art projects. But I would look at all these people on the sets of Nightmare Before Christmas, drilling holes in the floor, touching the puppets. I didn't know you could do that for a job. And around that time too, The Wrong Trousers came out, and Morph. I'd been a big fan of Morph earlier.
Morph.
So I listened to your interview with Pete, and little did I know that Pete and Dave Sproxton would be quite a big influence with Morph, because I really watched Heartbeat with Morph in it. Turns out I was born, by the way, 2 weeks before the first episode of Morph aired, which is pretty much their first project with Aardman. So I honestly, all these things were influencing me, but I just didn't know you could do an animation degree. And I was looking for degrees. I was looking for a model making degree because I knew it was something physical. I liked maybe product design or something physical. And while I was waiting to see the course, someone popped their head around the door and said, I still remember it, they said, "Is there anyone here to see the animation course?" And this is Bournemouth University in England. And I just went, "What? You can do a course in animation?" I'd never heard of such a thing. So I had a look around, and it was all, they had light boxes. It was all 2D. They didn't do stop motion at that time. But I cannot tell you this feeling of, oh my God, I've found it. I found that thing I'm passionate to do. It was genuinely like seeing the light, because I was frankly a lost and floundering art student trying to find his direction, and sometimes I was doing what I was doing without that much real belief in it, because I didn't really know where I was going. So finding that I could do animation, it all clicked. All these comics I read, all these programs from Cosgrove Hall, and recently then it was Nightmare Before Christmas. And oh my God, you mean you can have do a degree and have a career doing something like that? What? And that was it. I cannot tell you how hard I worked. This was around Easter time that year. I worked so hard putting the hugest portfolio together to get for my interview at Glamorgan. It was then called Glamorgan College of Art Design and Technology, and they did do stop motion on their animation course. There was only about 5 different courses in the whole UK that would do animation. It was quite a rare course in the early 90s.
Wow.
And so with absolute purpose and dedication, my portfolio was so big I couldn't carry that and my bag full of stuff and all the other carrier bags full of sketchbooks. And I think I had an early version of Richard Williams' survival kit where I'd copied some bits to try and understand the war. And trying to get all this stuff to my interview for university, Pete and Chris, my tutors, who are still friends to this day, they laughed at this young 18-year-old who had so much stuff he couldn't carry it through the door. And they were looking through some of it. They knew that I'd got the place on the course, it turns out, but they just put me through my paces, keep me guessing, and have some fun, giggling at my expense. But this guy's worked way too hard. He obviously wants to be here too much. Right. He's too keen. He's too desperate.
So the weight of it made it for you. all the weight that you were carrying. That got you in.
I did get the place. I found out fairly soon after. I remember the day very well. There's only been 1 or 2 times in my life where I wanted something so desperately. And that day, getting on that course for that university, it wasn't a degree at the time. It was a 2-year course to begin with. Probably that and the Corpse Bride audition many years later.
Oh, right.
Those are probably 2 moments in my life where oh my God, I want this so much was there. But man, I fair play to me. I worked so hard for it. And the one thing that I'll say that I think was lucky, well, there's obviously quite a few things that are lucky or right time, right place. So you can't take responsibility for all your own success. But what I think was a very lucky thing was at 18 years old, I had this kind of revelation. I don't know what I want to do, but I've got 40, 50 years of career in front of me. That's a long time. And I really should try and do something that I love or at least enjoy. I'd be daft not to. That seemed common sense. So man, when I discovered that you could do stop motion animation as a degree, as a career, and the dedication and the focus came from there, from that moment.
Right. So how were those 2 years? Like obviously there was so much hype and you were so excited that you got to do, you could learn something that you love doing. And was the 2 years an equally, blissful period of your life? No. when you were learning at Glamorgan Institute?
No. I'll dig out some photos with bad hair for you. Well.
Oh yes.
like anyone, I still remember the first week where we were doing the bouncing balls. It was all on 2D, and I had no knowledge of animation timing. I'm not born gifted or with any superhuman talent. My first walk was a guy, it's like a little flick book. He went across the page like this. He just sprinted across the page. And I was copying Dick Williams' survival kit for that as well. And with bouncing, we did a bit of stop motion, a bit of 2D, a bit of computers to begin with. But I knew it was stop motion. And because our tutor was 2D, we were doing walk cycles. So I did a 4-legged elephant walk, which was an absolute nightmare making my first puppet that I made. And I tried to make an elephant, which is a very slow walking beast, and it had to loop. It was horrible. So I had some successes and failures. They liked my style. They liked the amount of work I put in. But my first year, I'm going to show some photos now from my end of first year. I apologize to everyone that my desktop is a bit messy, but hey. Is that, can you see that okay? Right. Okay, so I'm 19 years old when I'm doing all this stuff. And let's go into here, I think.
Wow.
Student Tim. So this is my first year, and I was young and I was very much into toilet humor, and I'll show you some footage from it. This was the set I made out of a cardboard box, and the toilet was made out of this kind of plaster-like material that you could sculpt quite easily. It was meant to look quite literally shitty and rusty, and meant to look as vile as possible. I was very inspired by some of Puppet Factory and some Aardman stuff I'd seen at the Cardiff International Festival. There's me, 19 years old, stuffing the puppet and clearly giggling about the fact I've got my hand up his t-shirt. And I'll show some footage. I've only got remains of this from a VHS tape, but I can tell you now, my tutors hated this, absolutely detested it. So I didn't quite finish it either. So it was a big shame at the time. They really came down on me. Right, so I'm not going to go, I found it plays better if I don't go quite full screen. So
Right.
So, and if it plays bad, probably because it was bad in the first place. Now, there's actually a voiceover here. There's someone saying, I'll pause it for a second. Obviously he's having a poo, and somebody says, "Hey you, what are you doing? Don't you know you could have the toilets 2000, because toilet 2000 was the future, do it for you." And it proceeds to show all these wonderful ways that the toilet do the work for you, so you don't have to complain at all. Including, I think there's a nice moving one here. I'll stop it there, shall I?
How long is this?
That's the end. That's the end.
Oh, okay.
There, but I might share something else in a second. So look, I was just 19. I was very into toilet humor. My tutors hated it. They absolutely hated it. It wasn't finished for a start, but they did say that they thought the model making was terrible, the animation was terrible, the idea sucked. Okay, the idea, as you saw it, there was literally some sucking in the idea.
There was.
I don't think it's as bad as they made out to be, but they did it in front of the whole class. They literally destroyed me in front of the whole class. And we're still friends to this day, so we've talked about this moment many times since. And they've even used it as an example of, oh, look at Tim, he's worked on all these wonderful projects now. I remember when he was this literally crap film. And I went away feeling very wronged, I think. I felt it wasn't as bad as they said it was. The animation for a first-year student was all right. The model making, I put a lot of work into. Yes, the idea sucked. But what they wanted to do was make a real example of me. And I think they felt I had potential. And Chris has always said to me that he felt I was one of those people that if he really laid into me, it would give me this burning desire that, right, I've got to come back and prove myself.
Right.
Because some people, he didn't really even bother. They'd done almost nothing, and he barely said a word to them and just left them. He pretty much gave up on them. But with me, he said, I was one of those people that he thought I would come back fighting. And I really did go into my second year determined to prove myself, determined to prove I had potential. I was a filmmaker that could be taken seriously. I was, I was absolutely passionate to prove what I could do. So it was a pivotal moment.
Lovely. No, these teachers are like really, really critical, you know, and a very, you realize their role much later.
Yeah. I mean, now that I've done so much
The
teaching,
amazing things, yeah.
every student's different, and you have to sort of gauge if is this person so fragile that if I start criticizing their work, they're going to fall apart, or is this someone a lazy bum who needs a good kick up the arse? You learn to deal with different personalities. So I can see where my teachers were coming from, and it had the right result in my case. Would you like to see something I've never ever shown publicly before?
Oh yes, yeah.
It's very short, and I did it around the same time. And I found it the other day and thought, this was worth a look. This was made for our awards. We had an end of year Glammys. It was like a spoof Oscars. And it was an introduction for the stop motion award. And we made the puppets, and I animated it, and you'll hear I did the voiceover. So you'll hear my voice when I'm 19. It's very silly, and you might just recognize the characters.
Wow. On the toilet shot, we have a comment which says very Wallace and Gromit, maybe because of the contraptions that come and, you know.
Yes, and it's fair to say I was very inspired at the time by The Wrong Trousers. I think that came out in 94 or 95. I'd have to double check. But I started university in September 95. So this is the end of my first year of this film, but absolutely I was inspired by Wallace and Gromit. And imitation being flattery, I was probably copying it a bit.
Dougal and Brian had spent all day playing computer.
Oh, it froze. Have you still got that?
Yes, it's playing well.
Okay.
But it's paused now.
Yeah, mine's paused as well. I'm going to close it and open it again. Let's try that.
Okay.
Oh, we have a technical. Yes, it's doing a spinning wheel of death. Let me try. I'll open it with a different piece of software. You don't need to see it frame by frame. But I've been animating at university for probably...
Dougal and Brian had spent all day playing computer games. Beat you again, did I? Said Brian, pleased with himself. Only because you won't show me how to do a flaming dragon punch, muttered Dougal. Florence joined the others. Oh, boys, I don't know why you bother with those silly computers. You should count yourself lucky that you're real and made out of plasticine. Besides, there's something much better on the telly.
Did that play okay?
Yes.
Lovely.
Tragic roundabout.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting watching that now, because I didn't know much about what I was doing back then, but even then I was very interested in the audience and where the jokes were and how long I wanted a joke to last before the next joke, and trying to build up momentum. I think from those very early days, I was keen to get the right reaction, and I was very aware that the audience would have a reaction, and I was trying to, I'll say it, manipulate how I want you to feel and where I want you to laugh. And there's nothing wrong with me saying manipulate, because as directors and animators, we are trying to guide where you look and guide how you feel. And I don't know where that came from, but even from the very early stage, I was very aware I was trying to get something out of the audience. And in that case, it was laugh, and laugh at the right moments.
Right.
Yeah.
So was this the end of your the education at Glamorgan?
No, I just played that because it was a funny little short that I've never shown. But
okay.
My second year film was the one where I really was focused to try and prove myself. I can show that. It's only about. I'll play some. I'll find some pictures very quickly to show that part of the journey. But I worked really hard, and I'm not bragging. I really was so determined to try and prove myself. And maybe that's insecurity. Maybe that's goodness, there's some interesting. I'm just going to flick through some. Almost like a desperation to try and make my mark and be taken a bit seriously as an animator.
Right.
And so I worked weekends. I had puppets being made. All of this was made by me. The wall, the puppets. That's me at the end of my third year when I graduated. And this character here, Captain Kapow, that was my third year film, which I haven't shown for years. I don't really like it. I don't think it tells gags very well, or it's got too much in it. But that's why there's no hair, guys.
That's the secret.
There he is. So yeah, everything was made by me, written by me. I really worked hard. Well, I've got a thing with stuffing things up puppets' bellies, I can see. Anyway, this film won the best third year film award at the Grammys. So the Tragic Roundabout thing was like an introduction for the stop motion award 2 years prior, and the third year I actually won the award, which I was very proud of. Oh, and this is my second year film, which was all about a character trying to warn the other character that there's a bucket's going to fall on his head. And
the character on the van, is he the same guy on the toilet?
On the T-shirt.
Yes, on the T-shirt, yes.
Yeah, when I was, only a month or two in, the very first stop motion project we did was a sculpting exercise, and I sculpted this naked caveman.
Okay.
And I got a dissertation for it, my only dissertation ever to this day. Okay. And I gave it to my mum as a Christmas present, this naked caveman with goodness, it'd take me a bit of time, I'd have to find a photo. And he became my symbol. I'd have him and a poo in all of my films somewhere subtly. So I had little jokes that went through my films. There was the main film, and then there were little jokes that were a bit more private and personal. And for those that watched it 20 times, God help you, you might notice the caveman. And special props to the remote control, which I can tell you was not wireless. Oh dear. How about I play this film for you then? This is it's quite short.
Sure.
It's about a minute long, and this was my second year film. This was the reason I'm playing this film. Firstly, I still think it's quite well done. Secondly, it was my proving myself film. This was me having had the big failure of Toilet 2000. This was me trying to prove myself once again and win the respect back. Oh, and I was very inspired, by the way, by Pib and Pog, a film Aardman by
Pib and Pog.
Yeah, and because that's a very simple film with two characters talking, and it's an interaction between two characters, and it was, for me, laugh out loud funny. So in a way, I was copying the format of that by having two characters interacting. Here we go. There you go.
Okay.
You saw the naked cavemen for all of about
Yes.
3 frames. um,
Yeah, I caught a glimpse of Spider-Man in there, is it?
Yeah.
yes,
I
yes.
thought he was going to save. He was just going to take the bucket
that's,
with him.
that's the one time he missed.
Yeah.
It's funny because that story clearly has a backbone. It's got a plot and a payoff and a build up and a build up and a build up, which is what I'd kind of copied from Pib and Pog. But then, yeah, I tried to get lots of little gags in. It wouldn't matter if you missed it, but they were little bonus things. And I had a lot of fun coming up with them. And of course, there's many gags that I thought of that never ever got used. But those two first films I showed you, the toilet one and that one, they are pivotal because it was, in a way, it was my huge failure and frankly public shaming right at the beginning, and then the what's the word I'm after? The comeback.
Right.
Trying to come back and prove myself again. So, and maybe that sort of attitude has been something, the need to prove myself, the need to show I can do a good job. That might underlie throughout my whole career, frankly.
So
yeah.
Once you were done with the education, like you walked in with heavyweight portfolio for your interview, for your education. Once you walked out, like, was there another repeat? Because even on the commercial front, you know, in your portfolio, you have heavyweight films. You know, so how did these beautiful, you know, and variety of films, you know, whether it was Peter and the Wolf or, you know, chronologically, how did it go? Like, how did you meet up with these right people? What was it that excited you, or what was it that excited them about, you know, you being part of their team?
Yeah, I think that bit, the idea of people being excited by having me on their team, that would have come a bit later. As you can imagine, to begin with, I was keen to get whatever work I could. And of course, it took a long time. It wasn't easy. And I'm in the United Kingdom where this is one of the things where I am lucky. I was born in a country where there's a lot of companies that do stop motion spread over about 4 different towns. So I recognized quite early on when I was trying to approach companies, there's all these stop motion companies I'd never heard of. I'd heard of Aardman Animations by then. I actually did a case study on them at university to learn about the history of Aardman, which I didn't know any of that before I took a case study on them. So that was obvious. But I also felt Aardman were a bit too big at the time. They were doing Chicken Run, and I was such a small little fly, and they had this big feature film going on. I recognized that I'd just get lost in the ocean, and I'd be my mate Phil, who his film beat bucketing down at the Glamies in the second year, and he spent 6 months at Chicken Run making chicken feed, and then another 6 months doing mold making. And I recognize, all right, Aardman are a bit too big for me at the moment. I need to make my mark and earn my reputation elsewhere. So basically, it's the long road of contacting as many companies you can, getting rejected by all of them, but slowly getting a better understanding of which companies are where, what have they done, understanding the geography of stop motion, who's who in the United Kingdom, and doing my bits of unpaid work experience. And then I did finally get my first job, but it took 18 months. And like everything, that job finishes and you're looking for the next job and you're out of work again. And I spent much of the next 5 years really going from company to company, doing sometimes just 2 weeks or 2 days holiday cover. Sometimes it would be longer, like Fireman Sam was 18 months. I'll stick some Fireman Sam photos on while we talk through. And what was happening now, I was getting more and more experience. And I was getting better at coming into a new studio where maybe I didn't know the people, and I didn't know this is a pivotal time for me, Fireman Sam, which is why I'll go through some of these. I was getting better at coming into a new studio, new director, new puppets, and getting to know how do these puppets work? What does the director like? What does the director not like? Getting to know the other animators a bit more. And then I'd be out of work again for a month or 2 months. And it was around this time I did a bit of teaching too, back at the university I was studied at.
Oh, wow.
Partly, obviously, to pay the bills and keep myself employed. But Fireman Sam here was a really special one because I got hired on for 18 months on this. I was the assistant animator to begin with. Goodness, I remember I stuck a paint stick, what's the word? A paintbrush, that's the word I'm after, underneath to sort of jam the mud up to make the mud animate. I'll play a clip in a second. And Fireman Sam, there was lots of special effects and lots of water, lots of working with post-production about the fire and the smoke, lots of daring rescues and lots of quirky characters. So I learned a lot on this. 18 months of practice every day.
So Tim, were you working on multiple, were you playing multiple roles, or were you only animating the puppets? Like you said, you used the paintbrush for certain things. So were you also creating the set or working on the SFX later on?
No, I was only an animator at this stage, and
okay.
I had learned early in my career that I couldn't try and be a model maker, director, and animator. I should try and focus on one thing. I can give you different philosophies on that. If you're a very small company working with 2 or 3 people, yes, you're going to be doing much more multitasking. But the bigger the project, the more you're doing one role. And I needed time to focus and get better at animation. I'll play you a sequence from Fireman Sam because bear in mind I was getting better and better at turning up, getting to know different puppets, getting to know a different director.
And you'd mentioned that once you animate water in a stop motion project,
exactly.
Nothing can be.
I'll show you those 2 shots because I was a young animator still, and I wasn't sure how to do a walk yet. I was pretending I could do a walk and hoping no one noticed that I didn't know. And then when you're asked to do stuff like this, mud, there you go, 2004, this one. I didn't know how to do this, but here is the mud. I didn't want to touch any of this area, so I was sticking a paintbrush underneath, so I could almost lever it up from underneath, if you will. And I didn't have much experience with things like plasticine when I did that either. Now, I'm going to show this Norman drowning sequence because when I was at Fireman Sam, they had a sequence with quite a bit of water in, but nothing like this. And we said to S4C, or the producers did, can we please never do lots of water again? And they came up with this sequence. And here's some clip. I'll play it clip copy.
Oh, wow.
I looked at that on the storyboard on the wall and thought, oh my God, who is going to get that? Whoever gets that, that's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
And of course, who gets it? Yes, I get it. So I'm going to play a little clip. Oh, you can see here, just so to explain what it is, it's a massive sheet of Perspex. And we cut a hole around Norman. And there's a hole around here that he could be moved up and down on a scissor jack, a little riser. And then I'm animating loads and loads of different layers of cling film. So I had a lot of practice.
He's spitting out water as well.
Yes, he is. I'll play a little bit and we'll go from there.
Mama can't swim! Oh! We'd better get Uncle Sam! You go! I'll stay here! Grab hold of this, Norman! Oh no! Help! Help! Norman! Turn onto your back and kick! I tried! Head for that little eye!
By the way, at this point, I'm getting much better at water. This is probably the best shot in the water effects. But God, I was getting bored. That's a lot of cling film to have to move. and I was doing about 3 seconds a day, not the 10 seconds a day they wanted. I'll play a bit. I'll play a bit more because you see it gets even
Yes, yes, please.
sillier in a second.
Island! It's okay, Norman. Uncle Sam's coming. He'll save you. He's over there, Uncle Sam.
Yes, we see him, James. Inflate the pontoon, then.
Right you are.
Now, a little bit behind here, just when I thought it had got really difficult, they're going to inflate a pontoon over the water, which, because the line is, it's like a bouncy castle, it's got to bounce up and down like a bouncy castle on water. Now, can you imagine for a young animator who's really chuffed he's getting opportunities, but how intimidating. Can you animate a bouncy castle on the water with someone walking on it? Yeah, it was intimidating, but you just got to get on with it.
Pontoon inflated, sir.
We'll soon have you out of there, Norman.
Cool. That's just like the fancy castle we had at Mandy's birthday party. Whoa, steady there. You all right?
Yes, I'm fine, Penny. Hurry up, sir. I think a fish has just thrown up my chandelier. Hold on tight, Norman. Thanks, sir. Well done, Sam. First class operation.
Where?
I've just seen there's a question from Susanna about details of behind the scene of water. As you can see, I had quite a bit of practice, and it's not the last time I've done quite a lot of water, but I'll find a really bad shot. I think the worst shot is this one to give you an idea. Well, let's see if I can see it here. There's lots of different, I had 2 layers of cling film. There's a much flatter layer, and then they're not stuck down. I can just pull them slowly. If you look carefully, you might notice some shapes that get pulled along. And I learned with this to have a second layer. There's almost 2 layers of water, and the layer on top is lying not very flat. It's got lots of air under it. And frankly, you just can't see where one bit of cling film finishes and the next one begins. I think that's getting a bit more noticeable as a cling film shape. And cut them with scissors. Don't tear them with your fingers, because that leaves a real white line at the edge. Yeah,
Right.
that's an ugly shape.
And Tim, was there any assistance in terms of technology? Were you able to view it frame by frame, and how?
Yeah.
What are the kind of tools you were using?
Good question.
Back.
We had a software called Animate back then, which was hardware and software combined. So I was able to see the frames as I went. It was recorded straight onto video, not film. Here's a really bad shot. I was trying to use less water, and you might notice some of the cling film shapes a bit more easily. It looks like a frozen lake here, so this is the worst shot in the whole thing. Okay, I'll stop screen sharing. I must admit, I've kind of just missed the generation where it was shot on film and you had no video assist and shot blind. My student films, we had U-matic and Betacam tape. So I had a jog shuttle thing, and you saw that huge remote control. And then Animate was sort of starting around the time 1999 is when I started professionally animating. So long before Dragonprint. I have shot on film before, but we normally had a thing called a lunchbox, which was a portable device. There might be some people nodding if they remember a lunchbox.
Yes, lunchbox.
So there was some basic video assist. So I've never properly had to shoot blind, and that either makes me a bit of a fraud, or that makes me far too young and youthful to be there in the film days, depending how you want to see it. What I will say though about that sequence is that is quite a pivotal sequence in my career, because that's one of those moments where, all right, it's a special effect, it's not character acting, but at that time I couldn't imagine doing anything as difficult as that.
Right. But for a scene like that in the story, the special effect is the main character. That's what makes it believable. That entire sequence of the panic, and even when the pontoon, it's inflated on the like it's rolled out, and when the guy is walking imbalanced, and so all that, I think the water is the main character. So I think that was a very well done. It was a big challenge also for you, like like what you were dreading. It came true.
Yeah, because sequences like that don't come along very often. So on one hand, it's a bit of a privilege to be asked to do it. On the other hand, of course, there's the responsibility, and politically, you're in danger because I was doing 3 seconds a day, and we were near the end of the production, and we were 10 seconds a day is quite small for a kids series, which means it was quite higher quality. But when you're doing 3 seconds a day, the producer is not giving you the nicest looks in the world.
Right.
And there's a book. When we finished at the end of the day on Fireman Sam, we'd sign in and we'd sign out, and the animators in the book would write how many seconds they've done. And I've always struggled with speed especially in the early parts of my career, because I think I am very finicky and detailed, and I like to double check things to get them right. It's taken me years to get the confidence that that's absolutely fine. I know it. Move on. So back then, I was very self-conscious about trying to do a good job still. And when you're writing down, you've got Anthony and Tom were doing 15 to 18 seconds a day. Austin was normally doing 10 to 12 seconds a day. And Tim writes down he's doing 3 seconds a day. Doesn't make you look very employable.
But Tim, don't you, like, when you're bidding for different shots, a style like this would be pretty limited when it comes to just body language or conversations. But in this case, there was a lot more happening, which was taking up the time, right?
Yeah, and there, of course, there's a certain amount of forgetfulness on this. And Simon Quinn, the producer on Fireman Sam, we've been friends for many years now. He's gone on to do Frankenweenie and Isle of Dogs as line producer and things. And he gets it. He understands stop motion very well. He ran the puppet factory for over 10 years, making stop motion puppets. So as producers go, he's very, very clued on to stop motion and how it works.
Right.
However, he still has the political issue that he has to explain to the boss of the company or S4C, our investors. He's got to kind of try and explain why we're going so slowly. And what you need as a production, you need some shots that are much faster to do.
Right.
Because you've got someone like me who's just doing so slowly. So there's he's sort of covering it up to the finances to brush it over. But at the same time, Tim, it's just a cartoon series. No one really cares. Just
get on with it.
Doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
And that was a burden I really faced throughout at least the first decade of my career. I was meticulous, I was detailed, I really cared about what I was doing and getting it right. And I'm naturally like that. So there's a benefit that the quality of my work was going up and up, and I really was learning and trying and experimenting with things. I was reading Richard Williams' Animation Survival Kit again around that time, and I was trying some of those things on Fireman Sam,
right.
trying 2s, trying 1s, trying special effects. I was hungry to learn and get better, but I was never, ever, ever the fastest animator in the room. And sometimes that affects your employability. And I was very self-conscious that I was battling to be fast enough. Let's be honest, I think I've always been battling with trying to be good enough, or can I be better, or I must be better.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
there are a lot of queries coming in. Tony G, do you want to take up any questions now?
Yeah, there was a query from William. Let me just add him to the spotlight. There he is.
Hello, William.
William wants to know that did you use any ball and socket rigs or wire rigs for the mid-air shot of the ball thrown to Norman?
That's a very specific question about a specific shot that was 16 years ago. I might have a photo. I could dig it out. I think it was wire. I remember it. Goodness. No one's ever asked me this. Right. I think there was 2 pins that was glued to some aluminium wire, and it would stab into the ball. And the ball had the ability to be squashed and stretched a little bit. I forget what was inside it, so you could do a bit of bounce. I can even remember feeling it and holding it now. Goodness. So it would have been aluminium wire. And back then, William, in the early noughties, I think we call it that nowadays, it wasn't so popular to use ball and socket rigs. We were still coming out of the days of film, and the habit was still, if possible, you'd use fishing wire to hold something, because people seem to think that fishing wire was invisible, which obviously it's not. But around that time on Fireman Sam, the post-production was getting, digital post-production was getting more and more commonplace, and ball and socket rigs obviously are much more controllable. So if you can hide them, the animator can go faster, and there's not much difference painting out a ball and socket rig or painting out fishing wire. I did, by the way, though, William, learn a lot about post-production on Fireman Sam, because the guy who was doing all the fire and the smoke in, he was doing it in, the fire and smoke was computer animation. The water was stop motion. And so he was a mate of mine from uni. So I could just pop into the room and he could come and look at my shot, and he could tell me if what I was doing was a real pain for post-production, or whether that was easy for him. Or we'd have something on fire and I'd have a little torch that would follow the hand around to make it look like there was a light on the hand. And he'd have the fire later. And he'd also adjust the fire so that it would be pulled by my hand. So we'd actually work together quite closely, me and the post-production guy, and we'd learn loads.
That's nice.
I learned loads anyway about how post-production works.
I think William also is a stop motion student. He was a stop motion student. We can see his armature there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I also have a little thing that I 3D printed.
Wow, you 3D printed that?
Yeah.
Goodness.
That's from Nightmare Before Christmas, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. How lovely. And did you sculpt it in ZBrush, or do you?
No. This I just downloaded it. It was already available online. But this is a puppet I actually made, though. It's just a wire armature.
Yes. Okay. I can. I would be a bit more. Yeah. I'm trying to get a good look at it. But he's not a bad size. Yeah. I would probably be a bit. Okay. The arm works fine. You know what? I've looked at so many wire armatures over the years, and will give little opinions about what I would change or what I think works well. Depends how much time.
I'm actually getting a ball and socket armature soon, so I'll be starting to use that for the first time.
Yeah, I think my big question would be how it attaches to the floor, because if those feet don't attach to the floor well, how is it tied down? I can see. Lovely. Yeah, not a bad start.
But the water sequence must have really helped, strengthen your portfolio, whenever you showed it to somebody else, like all that effort that you put in, even though you churned out less. But like you said, you were very particular that, the quality should come out really well. And you were referring to 2D animation basics. So you're doing a lot of homework to strengthen even your stop motion, your work, basically. Yeah. So what did that lead you to? What was the next step after Fireman Sam?
Okay, yeah, well, first thing on your point there, no one knows or really cares how long a shot has taken. Once it's there on your show reel, it's there looking nice. And unfortunately, in the UK, all the kids series at the time, there was a lot of talk at certain companies, especially Cosgrove Hall, which is where I watched Wind in the Willows all those years before, that a good animator was a fast animator. And the faster you could get as many frames done as possible, you were considered great. You were definitely very employable, because they were. So it was more and more becoming a problem that get as much stuff done as possible, and doesn't matter if you ever see it again. Having a good number at the end of the day became important. And I was going in a different direction. I was trying to get my number up, but I wanted to learn and get better and do things I hadn't done before. So the water was a wonderful chance to expand my portfolio and show that I could take on very complicated shots. And I was getting known as being a good character animator. I cared about the performance, the feeling, and hitting the timings. And really now, if I have you're leading to the elephant in the room at the time was that there was this big new Tim Burton film coming that everyone was talking about. And yes, there had been children's series. I'd done lots of different children's series in different places, but unless you were at Aardman doing the Chicken Run and Tortoise and Hare that came after it, which never got finished, you were doing kids series and trying to work as fast as possible.
I guess episodic always had the pressure of numbers, right? Like you had to churn out a lot. So I'm sure that must have changed once you went into short films or feature-length films.
Yeah, they're all different. And the bigger picture really is, and you get better at this over the years, recognizing what's the situation I'm walking into. Is it important that we just get this shot done today? Or that we get the numbers up on the kids series, or for a commercial, you have to get that shot done today. Or is it that they need the most amazing performance? This is a very emotional shot where if we don't get the heart and the insecurity and the decision-making and the conflict within the character, if we don't get that moment and feeling right, this shot fails. And it doesn't matter if it's an extra half a day, so long as it hits. So you have to recognize who you're working with and what the situation is. And what this leads me into the Corpse Bride thing.
Right.
I got rejected twice, by the way. I sent my show reel twice. And it's the second show reel. I got rejected, got 6 months passed. I assumed it was never going to happen. And then I heard they were still looking. So I sent another show reel. By now I had the water shot and it was the time of Fireman Sam. And they liked the potential of the action stuff, but they wanted to see some dialogue. So I had 2 weeks to throw together a show reel with lots of different, and it was dialogue from Postman Pat, Fireman Sam, all the different kids series I'd worked on. Because by now I'd traveled around the country a lot. I hadn't worked abroad yet, but I'd gone to as many companies as I could do, often doing 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months on their children's show. So I was getting very adaptable. And my third show reel got me the audition on Corpse. And I'm going to show you the first day of my audition, which you can imagine is a very nerve-wracking experience. You'll go into a studio much bigger than you've ever been to. And someone who as an art student loved The Nightmare Before Christmas, the animation director, Mike Johnson, and Anthony Scott, the animation supervisor, they're both Nightmare Before Christmas animators. And they're going to be looking at my audition in detail.
Wow.
So this is back to being, I'll start screen sharing, I'll dig my first shot out. This is back to one of those moments in life where, oh my God, I wanted this. I was so desperate to work on this film, I couldn't really imagine the prospect of not doing it, but it all was based on this test. So you can imagine the pressure I put myself under. But I was also a bit older and I was a bit more experienced and I was good at walking into new environments. I think that's the key with this. So this is my very first day doing an audition. I had the morning to look at footage. You could look at as much footage as you wanted. And all I wanted to know was, could I match the style? So I'll play it and I'll talk you through what I was thinking. Okay. Right. It took me a whole day to animate. Now, the puppet's very tall, by the way. He's very, very tall. He's about, you can't see my hands, but he's well over 30 to 35 centimeters tall. I've never worked with a puppet that tall and that thin. I was told that every step, his feet are 12 centimeters apart. and every movement of his body is 1 centimeter. Every step is 12 frames.
Oh, there's Tony G trying to give some scale.
Yeah, for anyone who's read Richard Williams' Animated Survival Kit and gone into the walk section, this is a very nice, simple walk. 12 centimeters. Every step is 12 frames. And every frame he moves 1 centimeter forwards. Quite set, and they didn't want any forced up and down. So they would tell me what they wanted. I just, could I do it was the question. And then Mike and Anthony came and had a look. The first thing Mike said was, his hands are too floppy. His wrists have a flow. They're swinging too much. Don't do that. Anthony then looked at it in detail, and I'm going to try and find, where is it? All right, look at this heel here. Can you see my mouse?
Right, we can.
Okay, right. He actually went through frame by frame and looked how much that foot was moving. Then this one's going up and left. That one's going just left. See, that one's going up and left, just left. Next one, a bit down and left.
Down.
The next one is a smaller move and going up a bit.
Yeah.
That's just left, and that's a much bigger move. And he went through and pointed out the inconsistency between that,
the spacing,
and that, and that, and then that. And man, I have never had anyone go through my animation in that much detail before. And Mike then said that, right, here's me animating. This is my thinking. As he makes this step, watch the top of his head. It comes very high in frame. Suddenly, I wasn't expecting that. So I thought, oh God, is the top of his head is going to be out of frame, which it kind of is, which is rather unsightly. So I made him stop. I suddenly made the decision that he'll stop, as if he's seen someone that he knows and goes, oh, hello. And Mike looked at this and he said, the balance is off. And you've got to know your animation to be able to twig this one. The angle between those two legs is roughly parallel. These thighs are leaning back a bit, but the torso is super straight. And if you want to try this at home, guys, you will find that you can't quite stand that way. You need to take your torso forwards, or you'll want to fall backwards. Very uncomfortable. Oh, yeah. So I've never, ever had anyone look at my work in that much detail. I'll stop screen sharing for a second.
Lovely.
And yeah, 2 Nightmare Before Christmas animators probing my work and finding little holes in it. So,
Tim, now you know why they call it Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, and it's funny because that to me was the best animation in the world ever when I was an art student. And my tutor, Tony, said as such as well. He couldn't imagine stop motion getting any better.
Right.
I was actually showing some of Nightmare last year for a course I was doing. We did a whole week on walking, and we looked at some of Jack Skellington and Sally's walks. And there's some stuff that's beautiful, but there's other stuff that looks a bit, there's some dodgy walks there, or the balance is there. I even sometimes show corpse bride shots to students to show balance. And I find some shots where the balance is completely off, and there's no way the puppet could stand like that. And it's a chance for them to look at some shots for something as good as Corpse Bride and be able to see from themselves after my classes that, oh, the balance is bad there. And once students have had a class from me on balance, I'll show them something like the Corpse Bride shot, the test you've just seen. And if they can identify why the balance was wrong and what we would do to fix it, then I know that the class has gone well, they've learned. And those long Tim Burton characters are really good for learning balance because they're so long and tall and skinny.
Right.
If they lean a little bit, they look like they'd fall over and off balance really quickly.
Right.
So yeah, that's the first time really I started learning about balance, properly about walk cycles, being more conscientious about my spacing. How long do you linger somewhere before you snap? How much do you drag and snap, or is that too cartoony doing that? Me and Brian, and I'll bring up some photos while I talk from Corpse. me and my friends Brian and Tim Watts, we buddied up on Corpse Bride, and we would often knock on each other's we didn't have a door, but we had a black curtain. So we'd knock on each other's black curtain, and we'd say, Brian, what do you think of what I'm doing here? Have I moved it too much? Have I moved it too little? Should I stay here a bit longer? But is it too soon to blink? When should I do a blink? That's Brian there, in fact. So we would go and analyze each other's work, and because you're doing 2 seconds a day, which compared to the series I was doing was incredibly slow, it seemed, but very hard to do 2 seconds. But we'd never worked to this quality before, and it was very intimidating working with this is Mark, who was recently the animation director on Isle of Dogs. So now I'm looking at animation in very fine detail, really trying to, all those decisions you make with every finger, every movement of the eye, what's the first thing you see, you're so close to it, it's good to get a second opinion. And it was very, very valuable, obviously, for me understanding stop motion at a much higher level of detail, and critiquing. It became much more important. And when I say critiquing, I don't mean criticizing. I mean analyzing and talking about, here's what I'm trying to do. Would it be more effective if I did it a bit like this or a bit more like that? Should I stay there longer? You're analyzing, you're discussing, and there's no mistakes. There's no right or wrong. It's more, would this be more effective than that? It starts from a different level. Sorry, carry on.
Tim, I had a question at this point. Like when you are planning something, like do you very quickly sketch out or do a 2D line test? How do you share what, because you're discussing very subtle things, and to actually do it and show it takes so much time, especially with the puppets. So how do you actually, with the directors, do you have a very, very thorough, clear meeting before you begin every shot?
Yeah, I'd say on Corpse, it was, we would do a block and a rehearsal, which was the block is often very much for the camera and the lighting and some main poses. Mike would give feedback on what he did and didn't like. And then you'd do a rehearsal, which was more animation detail on 2s and 4s and 8s.
So when you mention blocking, is it with the puppet, just the main key positions? Okay.
Yeah. I haven't got any blocks from Corpse, but I do have some from Frankenweenie. I can show you as an example.
Sure.
And obviously,
so basically, you're going over the same shot more than 2-3 times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's also a similar question from Krishna on this. Let me just see. Krishna also has a similar question on this, that are the characters and their personalities discussed with the animators beforehand?
Yeah. I'll show you one of my favorite ones. This is a key one from this. Yes, but this project, even though it is very much about personality and character and moments, you are very much a performer and actor trying to find that character. So this was only my 3rd shot. Mike must have had confidence in me to give me this so early, but this was the first time we really saw Barkis as we saw him talking, acting, performing. It was his first main dialogue shot. I'll play it and I'll talk it through.
It's positively criminal. Why, if I had a woman like your daughter on my arm, I would lavish her with riches befitting royalty.
Okay, let's go back to this. So I was given a fair bit of free rein, but we would discuss who this character is. He is a psychopath. He is a serial killer. He goes from one village to another, convincing. He'll find the richest family in the village with an eligible young daughter, and he'll convince them that he's wealthy and that he'd be a good suitor, a good match for them. So I'm trying to be the English aristocrat gentleman. Well, that's what he's pretending to be. But underneath, he is a killer. He is a psychopath who cares about no one's feelings but his own and what he wants. So we would have the conversation along these lines about his agenda is to be as charming and persuasive as possible, that he knows he's going to murder her, take all her money, and then flee. So we'll have all that conversation about who the character is, and really it was down to me to be free to try and get that out of the performance.
I would lavish her with riches befitting.
And all of that, really, I'd proposed stuff in my rehearsal, and Mike was happy for me to go ahead. I don't think there was a deeper conversation in that. And he came in to see me, and when I got to about here, I'm near the end of the shot, Mike said to me, "Tim, how are you thinking of finishing it?" And I said, well, he's come all the way slowly to camera, slowly showing more hints of his dark, evil intentions. But this is the moment at the end where we see that real glimpse of who he truly is. So I suggested this move here with the royalty. And showing it, even the little twitch of the eye that you get here.
Yeah.
I suggested all of that, and Mike just said, yeah, great, Tim, go for it. So there was a lot of freedom there, but we'd had a lot of discussion about who this character is, who he's trying to be. And yeah, I was then on this job, I'm a performer. And that can go very well, that can go very wrong. Because if you're given free rein to perform in a certain way, somebody might love that. Somebody else will go, nah, it's not quite right. I don't feel it. So it's quite a it's a funny old individual thing to try and get right.
So before you get on to the puppet,
question.
Sorry, Tony. Tim, you must be acting out a lot, right? Like you must be having a lot of video references where you act out various versions of how to play that particular little piece of dialogue, right? Like the eye twitch and all that. Like, did you actually act it out like what you did just now for us on screen?
Yeah, I've done many different versions of how to find a performance and have that conversation with the director. Corpse, I didn't do much in the way of any live action videos, but what I did do, I might have to stand back so you can see my body. I would act it out in slow motion. So my first shot was finished going, I'm going to strangle her with my bare hands. And in slow motion, I would again and again kind of go, I'm thinking about like, when does this elbow come down? Is it just before this elbow? And when does the hand open? Right. And when does I'm going to twist my jaw down so I can pull and then snap. Strangle. Right. And I would do it again and again and again in slow motion. And I'm looking at my spine, how I pull my jaws coming in and then out. So on Corpse, I did that. Right. There are other productions, though, yes, where we film each other. Sometimes the director prefers doing that. Other times it will be very detailed blocks in rehearsal. Right.
I think it's so beautiful when you are explaining that self-review, what is happening to your own body and at what stages, what is happening, especially for stop motion, where it's all linear. It's a live performance.
Yeah. And you know what? You've just reminded me.
Like you cannot do the keys and then insert the in-betweens. Whether it's the easing in or the easing out, you have to do it live.
I tell you what, Wes Anderson wants you to. he's happy for you to go back and redo the work you did 2 days ago, but keep what you did yesterday and try and fit it in the middle. Anyway, we'll come to him later.
There are two questions here which are I think linked to what you've just said. And I've got both of the people asking the questions spotlighted on the screen right now. Ananya had a question which I think you've answered partly. That is the movement storyboarded and just given over for execution, or is it a more meticulous discussion with the directors for you to execute at your art direction? Basically, are you given that creative freedom? And I'm going to tag on to that Dapun's question, Dapun there on the right, who says that, has there ever been times when you've done with your shot and then get feedback on the subtleties that you mentioned in the walk example? And if yes, then do you start over?
Oh, can you say that last bit again? I didn't quite understand the last question.
Have there ever been times when you've done with your shot and then get feedback on the subtleties that you mentioned in the walk example?
Yeah.
And if yes, then do you start over?
Well, all answers have yes, and it depends, and sometimes this, sometimes that. They're all true in different scenarios. I'll first do Ananya's question, which was about how much of it is predetermined and how much do I make up as I go along.
Right.
Every director and production has a different preference. For example, the shot that you saw from Corpse just now, Mike really trusted me. I didn't always get it right, and there's I can show you my big failing on Corpse if you like. But he gave me a lot of freedom with Barkis. So I was discovering who Barkis was. But if I did Corpse and Victor or Victoria, people have been animating those for 6 months already. So I've got to match their style. Whereas with Barkis, he liked my style, and literally as I was starting, they were doing the first shots with Barkis. So he put me on Barkis, and I was able to invent it. I got the thumbs up from him, and the shot that you saw, other animators were told, do Barkis like this. That's how Barkis behaves. And that was a kind of a right place, right time, and I'd done some stuff with Finis and Maudlin, the other two bad guys, and he gave me a lot of trust. So that's one example. And one really extreme example of trust is the wedding scene in Corpse, which I'm quite well known for because there's photos all over the internet about this.
Oh, yes. Where you are like a Godzilla on the set.
Yeah. I'm going to play it, and I'm going to run and get the dope sheet for this because I've actually got it.
Lovely, lovely.
I'll play it once and then I'll talk it through.
Wow. So many characters on screen.
Yeah, well, and this was very intimidating. If you think back to the water shot that I did on Fireman Sam, not only am I the bad guy animator, but I've now got all these characters, and it's a long shot. So this was a big, intimidating challenge in front of me. I'll play it and then I'll talk it through.
Sit down now, everyone. Thank you. Elegant, cultured, radiant. Victoria has found a husband with all these qualities and more. Serendipity brought us together, and no force on earth could tear us apart. Sit down now, everyone.
Okay, let me explain a few things quickly. All of these are background characters, except for Maudlin and Finis here. They were made to be villagers walking in the background, and they couldn't do much. So me and Mike had a conversation. It was really an experiment for the block. It was like, what can they do? Tim, can you have a play with them for the rehearsal and see what you can do? And if you look at this one here, all she could do with her face, she got a very nice squash and stretch when she ate. So I suggested, all right, well, Mike, it looks good when she does this, but she can't really do anything else. So he's like, yep, cool, that's her thing. This one here couldn't do much either. So, but he had nice fingers. So we put in this finger tap, which was quite detailed to do, but that was his thing. Right. She could do almost nothing. So she did almost nothing and blinked, but I could get a little bit of moustache movement. So I was just suggesting ideas to him. And this old lady at the back, whenever she takes her hand off something, then she shakes. So she's got intentionally jerky animation. Anyway, so much of it was us just planning what all these characters would do. And also then the conversation was none of them should blink at the same time, because it looks like they've got telepathy between them.
Right.
None of their heads should go up or down or stop going up or down at the same moment. Otherwise, again, it looks like they're in tune with each other, and that would be weird. So we had this long conversation about all the characters, and I did a rehearsal. And then I said, oh, Mike, what should I do with Barkis? He's just talking the whole way through the shot. And Mike said, Tim, you know Barkis, do your thing.
Perfect, perfect.
So in terms of trust, yes, that was given as huge, you know, absolutely. I was trusted with that. And that's not always how it works. By the way, I've got my dope sheet from that.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's the waveform of Barkis talking. I've probably got the date in my name at the top somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. Tim, so for the students or for those who don't know what a dope sheet is, it is an exposure sheet and it tells you what each character is doing at every frame.
Yeah.
Tim, you can add to that.
Yeah, you can see the frame number here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, blah, blah, blah. Now, all these, and that's the voice, and that's his voice broken down. I can't quite read that. Does it say silence now, please? It'll be something like that. So I can see which sounds and words on different frames. Now, all these arrows are different characters. I don't know if it's focusing okay. And it's like, so if one of their heads moves down or another one moves their head up, I've made it so they all are slightly different times. So they never start and finish at the same moment. And it will even say when they blink to make sure no one blinks at the moment.
Lovely.
So that was just to make sure there's no clashes. I don't know if there's any notes about Barkis. And it's quite a few pages long because the whole shot's about 30 seconds. Look at that. After a while, I got into a rhythm, so I just stopped making notes. No notes at all, nothing.
That trust really brings confidence in you. Amazing.
It means that I've got the hang of it and I'm making it up as I go along. That's what it means. Whereas to begin with, I'm not so confident and I'm really focused on trying to figure it out.
And the scene also had a camera trucking in, so you had to plan the movement so that they were visible at the right time, because there are glasses, through which their performances could be hidden behind those glasses. And like especially the guy who taps his fingers on the table, you like planned it precisely with the camera movement as well.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Yeah. When's the moment when you see it? And if you want someone to look at a certain detail, you can't do another detail at the same moment.
Somewhere else.
You can't see both. And I'm sure I can show plenty of examples where I'm, let's use the word again, manipulating the audience to try and steer them to notice this or notice that and not notice the wrong thing. So much of it really is about where we want you to look and what we want you to notice and feel. Now, I've gone off on a big tangent on Anania's question. That's an example where I was given trust and free rein. You don't always get it right, by the way, when you're done doing that. Sometimes the director just won't feel or like what you did because you give them so much free rein. Other stuff, and Wes Anderson is the obvious example, you're given very little free rein. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that that's the way one person works or the way another person works.
Right.
And I have to recognize what they want and adapt. So this is a good moment to show an Isle of Dogs example then, because it's very different. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. You can decide for yourself. Well, obviously, some people prefer free rein. Some people are terrible at taking direction, for example.
Tim, there's a quick question again from Suchana where she was asking, are there secondary animators to do supporting characters and camera movement?
It depends. I did a shot yesterday where there was 2 of us, but we didn't need it. It was often you get in each other's way, or wrong folder. You often get in each other's way because you're both trying to use the keyboard at the same time to go through the frames. One of you might cast a shadow on the puppet or block the camera. So, and also you've got to coordinate. So all that stuff with where do you want the audience to look?
Right.
You'd have to be talking to say, right, don't do anything important for the next 10 frames because I need my character to be the focal point.
Right.
And then in 20 frames time, it's your character's turn. So in fact, I even heard arguments from Brad about this is the only photo I have of the actual table shot. and you can see the camera going along it. Brad, who was he's the main animation supervisor, I think they call him, on at Leica. He was on Corpse, and he used to do Celebrity Deathmatch, where they got two characters.
Yes.
They were done by two different animators to give them two different styles.
Right.
But he said the arguments you'd have, like, right, in 3 frames time, my character's going to punch your character. And you go, well, no, I need at least 8 frames to do the reaction before I can go. So you can clash.
So they have their own celebrity death matches before they get to their puppets.
Yeah. I can imagine Brad getting into a fight with many animators if you animate it together. So, and I say that in a very nice way because, I think when you've got 2 animators working together, you either need your part of the animation and your part of the animation to be unattached, or you need a lot of conversation. And personally, I feel there should be 1 chef and 1 assistant. Someone who's directing the whole shot and delegating some of the work, not 2 people discussing, arguing over who does what. It's like having ideally one director, and we're all doing what the director wants. It gives that clear vision. I was going to show an Isle of Dogs shot just to give a way of approaching animation. Where is it? Isle of Dogs. Here we go. Plus, I know you all want to see some Isle of Dogs, really. So this is.
Yes, you were mentioning the different approaches by 2 different directors.
Yeah, and you'll see this is the opposite of me being given free rein. Some people will quite like this method. I mean, I honestly didn't mind it myself. I just recognized that's what it was. So here's the animatic, and Corpse, Frankenweenie, Fox, they all had a similar approach with an animatic like this.
Dogs stay, trash island.
Okay. Now, what you may notice, there's a number up here that's going up. That's the number of frames. So frame 300 there. And all these timings, we need to do exactly. So when that hand comes up with the finger, Wes wants that to be in position exactly on frame 78. So I don't have the same creative freedom. I do exactly what I'm being asked here. Now we've got various animation tests, which are, so there are things that have been done, like here's a test of the towel that another animator had done, one of the assistants had done as a test. And it's only useful because Wes would say what he did and didn't like. So this was done by Rob, I think. And Wes said that Domo was sneaking up too much. He wanted it to be really quick and efficient. He's not trying to comfort the mayor. He is trying to protect his vanity, or you know, obviously the population, the Japanese population, are not allowed to see the mayor's bottom. He's trying to cover it as quickly as possible. So here's my block. I took there's a few tests like that done that I might be able to have access to. And I look at the animatic, and this is the most creative parts that I get. This is the bit where I look at the animatic, I get the puppets, and it's basically, Wes, do you mean like this?
犬はゴミじまいに留め置く。Dogs stay, trash island.
Now, believe it or not, even though some of that looks like finished animation, that was the practice, the rehearsal. But I did put a lot of detail in, because the more detail you give Wes, the more you can have a good idea if he likes it or not.
Right.
Now, what he did say was here, he wanted the card to be held as if the professor's holding a dog poo in a bag. He's so disgusted by the test results that he wants to get rid of them he holds them as if he's disgusted by them. Whereas I've almost thrown the ticket in the fire because I didn't want him to burn his fingers. Now, this is the only time in the entire film, it's cotton more smoke, you'll notice, that I said to Wes, if you want him to do it slowly and with disgust, I need some more frames. That's too quick and efficient. And he actually agreed and gave me some more frames. It's the only time I've been able to persuade him something like that. He didn't like this hand that you see here. So I sent him some different shaped hands for him to choose a hand. Originally, I'd made it so that the mayor only looks with his eyes, but Wes, you'll see he's edited this to, that's to show me, no, he looks with his head. So that's there to remind me to use his head. But I must do that position hand. He likes that hand, so I've got to copy that position hand. And here, Wes wanted the mayor to be a little bit higher, so you could see the bit of air between his bum cheeks. So I sent him an email with several different poses to get the one that he wanted. And then he didn't, when the professor turns, you'll see his body turns with his head. He's doing a 180-degree turn with his head. So it's natural your body would turn. Wes didn't like that. He thought it would be funnier if just the head turned by itself. So back to the original question, there's a lot of specific detail that Wes is asking for.
Right.
It's my job to give him all that detail.
Right.
I can't do anything without Wes approving it. Here's the final shot. So a bit slower and a bit more like a dog put. Well, a bit more like he doesn't really want to have it anywhere near him. Yeah. That was the approved hand position, which, to be fair, is more similar to the animatic. Turn. There you go. That is exactly how much air we want to see.
Oh, lovely. Silhouettes.
Yes, it's all about silhouettes, that's for sure. And lastly, look out for the professor's head turn when it starts playing properly. Oh, it's been a bit slow on me. Hopefully you'll see that the professor turns with just his head and not his body. That was the last detail. No, it's going a bit slow, so I will close it and leave it there. So I'm there to do exactly what Wes asked me to do, and that is the job. The most creative bit is when I take the animatic and I do a rehearsal with the puppets. I can try and put some ideas in, and if he just says, yeah, sure, then that's my creative bit.
Right.
And by the way, I'm not saying that I prefer one or the other. They come with their own different pressures, and each director works differently. And my job is to help the director realize their vision.
Right.
Whichever way we communicate that, whether it's with live action videos or drawings or that's what we do. Oh, I'll give you one anecdote from this week. I've been doing a commercial. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention it. I've emailed the producer to ask her, can I say what I was doing this week? Let me see if she's replied, hot off the press. Hope you have a good interview. Perhaps you could mention it was done for a big retailer. Right, that's what I can say. So I did a commercial for a big retailer that I can't name. And we had to animate lots of items of food, and they're dancing, and I had to do a twerk. I had various dances, so I'm demonstrating. Oh, with this object, we could do a dance like this. So I'm having to show to the clients. I think it would be like this. We can film some video if you like. And when we came to some twerking, which is one of the biggest gags of the whole thing, I had to show them how I thought this object would twerk. Now, I'm not a twerker. I don't know how to twerk, but I've studied lots of video footage now, frame by frame. And I had to, so we can give the clients confidence that here's what we're going to do, I had to kind of show, right, it's only 30 seconds long. And in that 30 seconds, and I literally had to stand up and move I'm not going to twerk at you, but but it's more, so 30 seconds, see the character, this way, this way, this way, this way, shake, 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 cut. And I turned around to see that all the clients had got their mobile phones out and they'd started filming it so they could put it on Instagram.
They must have planned it in advance, you know. Let's ask him about this question and keep all your record cameras ready.
What we can get. I guess the point is, you're trying to find the best way to communicate with the director or the client. Here's how we're going to visualize your idea, because it's not easy. I did some eggs for I'll show you an Easter commercial for TV programs. They were going to show Tom and Jerry and Garfield and Scooby-Doo, but we were going to advertise them with eggs. So I had to make 2 eggs move like Tom and Jerry. I had to make another egg look like Scooby-Doo and Scrappy. I'll show you an example, but it's very easy for the clients to come up with, oh, this egg moves like Mr. Bean. It's an egg. And they're doing, oh, it can do this and this and this. And I have to say, can you try doing that with your arms behind your back? So we're trying, and I'm not criticizing, I'm just trying to find a common language to get what they want. And I'll just for fun, I'll show you Tom and Jerry one. So much of what I'm doing, the point is that much of what I'm doing is recognizing who I'm working with and trying to find a way to help them visualize and help me demonstrate that I've got an idea what they're doing. Boomerang commercial. Let's go for Tom and Jerry Chase. This is a nice one. Bear in mind they're the same size egg. Okay. And you need to make Tom feel like he's bigger than Jerry. Tom's a big cat and Jerry is a small mouse. Again, easy for them to have the ideas. Hang on. I do apologize. Here we go. I thought I turned it off. Here we go.
That cat and mouse are in the house, literally. It's Tom and Jerry up next on Boomerang.
Okay.
That.
And you can maybe see that I've tried to make Jerry.
That cat and mouse are in the.
Feel smaller with little bounces. Tom has slightly bigger bounces, only very slightly. And Tom also takes longer to turn around on the curve. When they can turn, Jerry's smaller and lighter, so he can turn a bit quicker. Tom's got a much bigger turning circle.
House, literally. It's Tom and Jerry up next on.
And here's one other example from this to show how we planned things like this. So this is another way that me and the director were talking together about what the director wants to give me a clear reference. Quite a nice, clear visual, this one. Here we go.
Okay, so imagine he's in doing root, might want to be about looks in, straightens up, falls in, there might be a little bit of that first, and then back, and it's going like that. Rolling, rolling, rolling off. Okay.
Okay. This was one that I got a bit wrong because trying to animate Mr. Bean is as an egg is very, very difficult, especially when he doesn't have arms and they wanted him to lose his balance. Making an egg lose its balance is very difficult. Here we go.
Stay tuned for more marvelous mayhem from Mr. Bean. Up next on Boomerang.
Okay, I'll stop screen sharing. So really, I guess the point is that every situation's a bit different, and I've got to adapt, work out what they need, find a common way that we can communicate and understand each other. I'm there to help them visualize what they want.
Right. Tim, I was keen to know, like, once you worked with different visions, of different people. Now, when you're making your independent films, like the latest film that you shared about, like where everybody has something abnormal about them, there's nothing to feel bad about it.
Yes.
That film was so beautiful. So, like when you're there are different languages which are set by directors, like you mentioned, Wes. They have almost it's a very different language. So when you are making your own film, like how do you're very free to create your own language. You've been exposed to so many languages. So how does that work how do you approach your own films? Like, you are the boss now. You set the rules and you decide what works, what doesn't, and you're also directing many more artists.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right about like a toolkit. I think you mentioned it. A toolkit of different ways of approaching things, different ideas, and different philosophies. And philosophies very much, because different companies, different directors have different things that are important to them, and there's different priorities, schedule, what have you. So yeah, my toolkit is probably pretty vast in that I can adapt to different styles very well. So if it's me, it's quite simple, really. The first question is, what are we trying to do here? What's this film about? What are the key elements? It could be the message we need to get to the audience. And once you're clear what you're trying to do, then we can have a discussion about different ways we can do it. And then we can start thinking about what's the most appropriate thing. And it's a bit like when I talked about animation on Corpse Bride, and I was saying, should I stay here a bit longer? Should I drag and then snap? Or Wes Anderson would have you do a more efficient linear move. Some are more effective than others in different ways. So you decide, what is this world? How cartoony is it? How realistic? How is it emotional? My Life as a Courgette, for example, the subject matter was very much about children in a foster home. So it's about their much deeper feelings under the skin and their insecurity and trying to understand the world. So that suits a much more internal, subtle, realistic style where you're really playing with deep gut emotions. Where the Wes Anderson style clearly is more about images and composition.
Very graphic as well.
Yeah, and Nobody is Normal. I think it'd be great to show a bit of that in a moment. That was a very small project with Catherine's only been directing for a couple of years, I think, but she'd been working very, very hard on it. She's already very, very tired, and I'm really there to help her. There's about 3 of us in the basement for most of it. I'm there to help her make this film the best it can be. So I want to give her as much support as possible emotionally, but also with ideas and the ways we can approach the shot, and also animation timing. Nobody is Normal. It was only a minute long with the Radiohead music, and every shot is really, really short. So if I've only got 40 frames, but you need to see the characters, he's scared of rejection, for example, or he wants to be accepted, but he's nervous that they'll reject him. And I need to convey that. And then maybe he's then got, his zip comes undone, he's got to try and grab it. And I've got very few frames. So I've got to make each moment count. So I would say to Catherine, and it's a discussion, but I might suggest, all right, if for the first 12 frames, he's in that wide-eyed, slightly coming forward as if he wants to be closer. And then the other thing happens, and I'll even help her structure how many frames I give. Like I might say, if he's looking for something, he needs at least 8 frames when he sees it before he reacts to it. Otherwise, so we have to use those 8 frames for that. We need to use, and I'd help break the shot down into telling the story and the emotion, but being very efficient with what we do with the few frames that we have. And let's be honest, me working that way probably started way back on Corpse Bride when we were analyzing frame by frame detail and what impression certain things get. I'm just much better at doing it now, and having had that conversation.
Tim, can we see an excerpt from the film? It's such a beautiful and different materials you've used every project. Like your models or the character designs. Like the Zucchini film has very unique styling and character design.
Oh, do you want to see Zucchini?
We could like one by one. We could see little excerpts from the films.
Yeah, my life. I can't see my life. Oh, wrong folder. That's why. Yeah, so this one was tricky. I'll have to just double check which one's which. Okay, this was my first day on the job and doing a test. And Camille, so the conversation on this film is very much about how the character feels. Now, they've been shooting. I'll play the test and I'll talk it through.
Ouais, je sais. Bon, on voudrait le plus gros nounours possible, s'il vous plaît, madame.
Okay. Right, I'll get the actual one and talk it through. I think one of these hasn't got audio. Now, in the story, they've been shooting at the fun fair, and she's been shooting and popping lots of balloons. And she's really, really good at it. And Courgette says to her, how come you're so good at popping balloons? And the reason she's so good is because when she was younger, she witnessed her father shooting her mother in a rage. Not very nice subject matter. A little girl sees her father killing her mother. And of course, she immediately is reminded of this memory. So the beginning of this shot is her going into herself, and she's within that memory, she's drawn in, and then she's trying to find, she's remembering she's trying to find a way to tell him, but she doesn't want to say it, and she's trying to get the courage up. And as she goes to tell him, he tells her, it's okay, I already know. And at that point, she takes a breath, she relaxes, and then because she's won a prize, she can relax and be a little girl again and get all excited and say, I want the teddy bear, please. Hey, Mum, I want that. So I've got to go from this incredibly internal state of remembering her father killing her mother to getting the courage to tell him, to relaxing because she doesn't need to, and then she can just relax and be a little girl. It was a big range in this shot.
Yeah. Moi, je sais. Bon, on voudrait le plus gros nounours possible, s'il vous plaît.
Okay. But you could hear from me talking that everything we discussed with that shot was about feelings, anxiety, and deep primal emotions that and these are little children as well. They don't even understand their own emotions. So that's a very, very different challenge. And if you haven't guessed yet, I like variety. So, what was the next example you wanted to look at? Did you say?
I have a question before that, if you could, Tim.
Yeah.
This probably want to take you back to your initial starting off days as a student, getting your first, grinding by your teachers, and understanding that it needs a lot of work, a lot of patience, and probably setting you right. To becoming a teacher yourself now, and being a director, being an animator, there are, I'm sure, many occasions where you come across people who don't share the same mindset as you towards work.
Yes.
And this, I want to run this as a parallel conversation, both as an educator, because you will find a lot of students who don't share the passion that you would see or would want to see from them.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the same time, a similar situation arises with you in your professional sphere, where you're working with some artists, hopefully not, but you can't really pick your colleagues many times, who don't really bring that same kind of passion or dedication or the kind of madness to the table, which probably you are comfortable bringing. So, and being a person yourself who has that disposition, that you're not going to be letting go easily, and you want to spend the time and you want to take the effort, even if it means 3 seconds a day. How do you kind of reconcile between these two worlds? And I mean, I just want to understand the individual here, because this is it's a very common thing that we see across both in the education space, the teacher, student space, and in the professional colleague space as well.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. There's lots of profound things to think about there. I suppose when I first got into teaching, my initial feeling was, again, I was young and I was much more insecure about whether I was even qualified to be in the room teaching. It was before Fireman Sam, for example. So I probably had a lot to prove to myself as to how useful am I, or is there a way I can help people to improve their work and understand themselves better. And I remember having some key little victories where a student who had major anxiety and depression, after a whole week, he finally opened up to me and showed me his film that was deeply personal. And to get someone to open up and feel safe with me to discuss their work, that to me was great. I was helping, I was making progress. But you're right, you then get some people, sometimes it's your colleagues, other teachers. Obviously, there's quite a few students who are not as conscientious as others. And I guess it's one of those things in life you learn that you can't help everyone. And different students need different approaches. Some do need the slap round the face and being told the harsh truth. Some of them will get quite confrontational when you start. The idea of their work being critiqued, they see that as quite an aggressive, quite a threatening thing, and they might get very defensive because they feel that you're criticizing them personally, which brings out the fight, flight, or the fight response. So as I've got older, I understand human psychology much, much more. And also having taught so many people, you get to recognize certain personality profiles. And I recognize that I've got to adapt myself to get the best response from someone. I can't use the same technique on everyone. So I often start a class with a fairly generic exercise. It lets the students get used to the puppets, but it also allows me to get a feel for how they're responding. Some are really meticulous and very slow, and they tend to be the ones it's more like me actually, but they tend to be the ones who are super nervous about making a mistake or getting something wrong. I'll come back to the word wrong in a second, because the word wrong is wrong. Other people, of course, are much more throw themselves in, a bit more slapdash. Let's try this, let's try that. Very experimental, but their attention to detail may not be so good. So I will take different types and I'll take them in a different direction. So my classes tend to start off with one generic thing and immediately become about 5 different classes. What I've really, really learned as a teacher is one of the more useful things I can do. Well, first of all, I recognize that in 1 week or 1 day, there's only so much I can teach you about animation. Everyone here probably is aware that animation takes time and takes much longer to get good at. So I've really got quite adept at going, well, if I've got 2 or 3 days or 1 week, what's the best use of that time? And I really tend to lean on muscle memory. So I'll get people to do a similar thing again and again, but with progression. They feel they're progressing, but they've repeated something enough times that it almost seems obvious and common sense to them by the end, but they didn't know it at the beginning. The other one is I try and really take away the fear of mistakes and getting something wrong. So going back to my early animation where I didn't have a clue about timing, didn't know what I was doing, and then moving forward to not knowing how to do a walk on Fireman Sam and hoping no one would notice. And then reading Richard Williams and trying some of these techniques as I go, and then moving forward to Corpse Bride, where we were analyzing all these little frames. There are so many different ways you could approach anything, and to say that's right or that's wrong is completely false. And there are some things that are blatantly wrong, but that's, bear with me. Or even the fear of making a mistake. I read a wonderful quote last night from the wrestler John Cena, and it was basically like, if you don't try, you're sure you're never going to fail. But I forget how he finished it, but it was along the lines of every time you try, you are going to keep making mistakes. You are going to need to keep making little adjustments to what you do. Maybe it'd be a bit, it would be more appropriate if it was a bit more like this, or a bit larger, or a bit smaller, or you need clear direction on what you're trying to do, and then we can discuss all the details of how much is too much, how much is too little. And then the idea of making mistakes doesn't matter, because all of the shots I get my students to go through, and we'll find those frames where the spacing isn't so good. And I'll try and get them to verbalize it themselves so that they can see it, and they could say, oh, if I did it again, I'll do that next time. And I remember Mark Waring saying to me on Corpse Bride, and I think it's when you saw the photo of Mark walking Magdalene and Finnis through the corridor for the according to plan sequence. And I said, because I was only there for a few days, I said, oh my God, it looks perfect. And he said, if I ever do the perfect shot, I might as well retire. Nothing's perfect. All those little decisions we make about the spacing and the hand positions and how long to do this for, that for, we could have a creative discussion forever about the result of doing it a bit more like this or a bit more like that. So there's no mistakes, and I really try to emphasize to my students that getting something not perfectly right is brilliant, because if you do everything perfectly right, you're learning nothing. Every time you make mistakes, and I don't like you, or I want to even take away the faux pas that a mistake is a bad thing. Making a mistake means that I could have improved it a little bit by maybe doing this, but I know that for next time. And that way you've learned, and that way you're progressing and progressing and progressing. The tricks in your animation toolbox are growing and growing.
Tim, on that note, I think
one of the things that I always tell, I'm sorry, Vaibhavji.
Yes, please go on.
Just wanted to comment on what he said in terms of mistakes, because that's a very interesting insight. One of the things that I tell my students always is that, the best place to make mistakes is when you are in your school or in your institutes, because you always have, the umbrella of a teacher or a mentor, who's there to help you improve and correct. So don't be afraid to make a mistake, and don't be afraid to falter. Don't be afraid to go wrong, as you're saying, quote unquote. Because real life is not going to be that forgiving. Once you're out there, if you're not going to improve in the initial phases in school while you're learning, and you're going to be always scared or trying to get, as you say, the perfect shot, not learning in the process, that's not going to help you when you're out there in the real world. Because
you're very right, Tony, that being at college, you are in that safe space.
That's right.
Where, you might as well get as much feedback from the tutor as possible. And as you know, some students, you have to really coax them to, please show me your work so we can discuss it. And a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-old art students, it's their art. It's very important to them. And the last thing they want is to them, they think you're ripping it apart.
Right.
I think it's very easy to get too emotionally invested in the thing you're doing now, where that piece of work you're doing is just one of many, many things you'll do. And I think the process of self-analysis is the one that never stops.
Right.
And just to extend, Tony, on leaving college, those children's series I did at the beginning, again, you've got to rack out as many frames as you can every day. If the shot wasn't perfect, doesn't matter. It's still going to be on TV. But it was my chance to try different things. What happens if I go from ones back into twos? What are the good ways of doing that? So, yeah, it was less precious than, for example, the shot that I just showed you from Courgette, where I've got to get into that character. But I think, especially for younger people, but we all have to recognize we have anxiety. We have it for natural reasons. We all have a fear of rejection. That's natural. And of course, with artists, with our work, most of us, we need reassurance from others that we're doing okay, even that other people value and respect us and love us. That's a natural human instinct. So all this thing of anxiety is basically a fear of rejection from others, and recognizing that you're not going to get it all right. Some people will like it, some won't. Not everyone will be honest anyway. It's about learning to forgive yourself, that at least you hopefully, you at least want to feel that you tried your best, and it will never be perfect, but at least we can have a discussion about what did and didn't work and how we can improve. And that way you've got non-stop self-improvement. I never want to be at a stage in my career when I'm giving a talk and they'll call it a Tim Allen masterclass, which they always like to do. And so you're advertised as this master, and any master of something would tell you, don't call me that. I'm unless the ego's out here. I'm forever learning. I'm forever improving. I didn't get to this stage where I know it all now and I'm going to bestow my wisdom. It's a constant path of self-improvement. And I don't want to get to a stage where I walk into work and go, I know exactly how to do this. I have all the answers. I want to go in going, I don't know how we're going to make that piece of fruit twerk, but I'll have a go and we'll figure it out. And some of it will work better than other bits.
Just make sure you bring your mobile phones out.
Yeah. Even my mobile phone going off. That's a mistake. That's a mistake.
Tim, I just shared the link to Nobody is Normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, all of you should definitely watch this short film. Should we see a little clip from the film?
Yeah, I can see.
Refreshing
show you a bit.
mediums that you've used over there as well.
You know what? It's only a minute long. I think we can watch the whole thing.
Yeah. Let us. Yes, that would be.
And as I screen share, I'll tell you now that this was just 3 of us in the basement, really, and a producer upstairs. And if I can find the folder that is. I'm very, very proud of this. And the director had been working all through lockdown to make this work. So it was really, really important to me. I've forgotten the name of it, and Nobody is Normal. Or maybe it's on my desktop. Let's play it from here. Okay. I really wanted this to work for the director. I wanted to help her, and I wanted to give her something really special, because she had a beautiful message, and I wanted to make sure she had a performance that helped to tell it. Very simple puppets as well.
When you were here before, couldn't look you in the eye, just like an angel. Your skin makes me cry, but I'm a creep.
I'll tell you one little story about this end shot.
Lovely.
They're all, thank you. They're all they're all very simple puppets made just for this, and it took quite a while to rig them and stick things in them. They couldn't stand up very well, quite a lot of them. And I think I did a full day and stayed till very late animating the clapping. And we'd finished the shot. We'd agreed it was finished, but it had taken a long, long day, and I was very tired and sore. We got to about there, and that was the predetermined length of the shot. And the next morning I came in and Catherine said to me, Tim, I think it needs to be a bit longer. It's a really nice moment. And I know this took you ages, but can we have another 3 seconds? And the 3 seconds became 6 seconds. And it was one of those where for stop motion animators that know what the pain of just wanting to get a shot done, especially when you've got a really big shot, the relief of getting to the end and then the director says, do it again, or we need a bit more. She was right. I completely agreed with her. And I'm so glad we did the extra. But there was that moment of going, oh man, really? That's going to be another really long day. we were all very tired.
No, but I think, that...
And, what is the, I mean, something tells me that the song here was a big inspiration for the direction you guys took on this film. Am I right in that assumption?
Yeah, the song was there from early days before I came. And because it's a charity piece for Childline, I don't know how they approached Radiohead and said, would you mind if we use it? And Radiohead just said yes. I think they thought it was a good cause. I don't know any of the details of any deal, but so she edited it around the music, which you'll see it plays out really nicely with the music.
Yes.
But I love working with music. As an animator, it gives you two things. Obviously, you've got mood and feeling, and the animation has to go with that moment. And yeah, so you've got to capture emotionally the characters are in a certain moment and mood, and you can all go with the flow of the music for that. The other thing it gives you is very restricted number of frames. So it might be you have exactly 14 frames to do this thing, and you've got to make careful decisions. All right, what do I do with the first 6 frames? By the time I get to frame 12, I need to be here, and then we start moving to cut on the move. God, we need at least 4 frames for that. So you have to make very technical decisions and squeeze the emotion naturally into very technically specified places. And as you can probably guess, I rather enjoy the dialogue about how do we construct this. I had a shot yesterday where characters had to all come into position and stop at different times and roll into position. So you've got a plan technically, but if you're going to finish there and start rolling, where do we start at? And the shadow comes into shot before the character. So there's loads of technical bit to get them into exactly the right place, all at different times. Once they were there, it was like, right, turn off your technical brain. We're now dancing to music. And yes, there's a beat. We've got to hit the beat, but we need to get the rhythm and the feeling of the music. So stop. It's not technical anymore. It's, it's learning when to use different parts of your brain for different things. And it'd be the same with a character performance. And something I've not mentioned really yet is if you're trying to make something funny and comical, that's using a different part of your performance as well. Some people are very, very good at emotional animation, but try and get them to do something comical and funny is a different kind of timing. And I'm obviously not the best in the world at any of these things. I'm a good jack of all trades. I'm good at adapting. I'm a good all-rounder is probably how when you look back at my career, you could probably say, yeah, he's pretty good at most stuff, but he's not the best at anything.
No, but I think like whatever you mentioned about, empathy for others and everything is so beautifully captured in this film. And I think the decisions you've made to be associated with certain films has probably given you such beautiful experiences, and it's taken you to a beautiful journey. So I don't think it's whether you are a master of or none, or jack of all. It doesn't matter. But I think your journey has been so beautiful, and you, like you said, manipulate your audiences, and to see that they are having fun or they're reacting the right way. So
Yeah.
as long as you're succeeding in doing that, you're achieving what you wanted. I
In
think
fact,
there was.
if you compare Nobody's Normal to my first student films that I showed you, forgetting the toilet one, that whole thing of being aware of the audience and what reactions I'm trying to manipulate, and or the journey I'm looking to take you on, I understand it much more now than I did then, but it's still very much a similar principle that I'm trying to take the audience on a journey with me, take them on an experience. And there's technical things, and there's emotion, and there's trying to combine whatever's appropriate at the time. Yeah, and I'm better now than I was then.
Right. Tim, I'm going to take some questions because, like you mentioned, there have been such beautiful views shared by the audiences. You can also read them. So, but before that, very quickly, one quick question from Mark Drosario.
Yeah.
Which is like, how were the transitional puppets made in this film? Nobody's normal.
Yeah, I think
was
on
it
my
a mix
website,
of replacement and displacement? Like
it was pretty much. I'll screen share. I've only got one photo. I don't have many photos from this for some reason. Too busy working. Oh, here she is. Now, so Catherine, she's not an animator herself. So she wanted my guidance on how many frames we'd need and what I could and couldn't do. So I drew on a piece of paper some rough shapes for replacements. And we did do a very quick test with them. Here's a shot of me actually. So they could all come off with K&S, but it's a mixture. I'm going to go to the shot where you see him transform near the end. I think that would be the best one to show you. So I'm trying to work out, what do I need a replacement for? And what do I need where can I cheat it to camera? So for example, let's go through frame by frame. So we start here, in fact we have it here too. So I start pulling down with the hands so that the zip looks like it comes first. And I'm trying to line up the nose and the ears, so that looks similar. God, they're messy, aren't they? So it also, the nose is part of an action, it's part of a curve of movement.
Okay.
You can follow the curve. And here, we use the same heads again, and then there was about 3 different ones where it was just like a big lollipop stick shape, I suppose. And that's with a fake shirt and fake arms, fake head. And these are on a separate rig, so I make them fall away. And with this, with the monster itself, so these are separate to the monster. There's about 3 different shaped monsters, and I was moving them a bit nearer camera, and then the replacements, then a bit nearer camera, then another replacement.
So it looks like it is growing.
Yeah, it's a mixture of stuff. I mean, transforming objects, there's so many different ways of approaching it. I find these things really interesting. A lot of it, you've got to, you do a test, you've got to do a fair bit of making it up as you go along, really.
Also, I noticed that there seem to be like 2 layers there of the clay puppet and the wool puppet behind it. Is that, there was a frame I could see a part of the wool puppet sneaking out from behind the clay puppet.
Yes, there was. Sometimes we use fake arms or fake head, which we put separate so they don't knock each other, basically. I mean, all of these things, I thought I'd show you this one because this is another nice example of a transformation where to the camera it looks fine, but we've actually got all these separate parts being held in front of the camera to look like that's growing into this, for example. So there'll be a lot of cheating and camera trickery. And they're just, I find them very interesting. They're a good experiment, really. And until you try it, you don't really know how you're going to do it. So this is one I did for Isle of Dogs with the robot dog transforming. It takes a bit of time. Okay. Now, frame by frame,
Wow.
I think I took some new sticks and put them there. We took a dog apart and I just used bits of the dog. They just get added frame by frame. So he's moving up and forward. Goodness. Here I put some different legs on and I put a different head on. Oh, they're not connected to the dog. They're probably behind him. That's a different head. Moving up again. Another different head. There behind the dog. And oh, the arms, as you probably noticed, aren't attached to him. So I can move them sideways. And I think we have a different chest panel that comes in. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think what people get, I think especially a lot of the younger students, they get intimidated by the fact that, you know, this is the end effect that we're trying to achieve. And what I found is, correct me if I'm wrong, if you keep the macro picture in mind, that, you know, you're going from point A to point B, that is the whole purpose of your story, right? So within that macro story, there's a micro story here of this dog transforming into whatever, you know, the larger version of itself. It's going to be 1/25th of a second for that one frame, which you are fussing over trying to get it perfect. Whereas if you keep the macro picture in mind, it's going to be gone even before you realize it, but it's going to add that little extra flavor that is needed for the movement to come alive, you know.
And you've got to recognize which one's more important at different times. Sometimes getting the damn shot done by the end of the day is more important. And yes, the number of times you are so in your zone of doing it, and then you watch it a day later and go, oh God, it was over just like that. What was I worrying about? That's a very common animator feeling. Mark Waring, again, animation director for Isle of Dogs, he said, I caught a bit of an interview with him the other day, and he was saying pretty much every project he comes into, they show you what they want to do, and the first thought is, right, how on earth are we going to do that? And bit by bit, you've got to figure it out. And you don't have all the answers, but you'll talk it through, come up with your best guess and give it a go. And it won't all just work first time. So being more forgiving of yourself, that you don't just know how to do everything. And you won't get it all right. You will make mistakes.
Yeah, there's a lovely comment from Dada Daniels here, I think on YouTube. The kids these days are terrified of failure. It is so sad. They miss out on the fun of exploration or merely trying to see if it works.
Absolutely love that comment. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, fear of failure, fear of rejection. I wish I knew this earlier. Just give it a go, and don't be so hard on yourself.
Right.
There are some, on that note, there are some lovely, there's a little kid saying hi to us. Grace, don't, I bring him back. Hey man, how you? Tim,
is that Peter?
Yes. No,
that's Peter Jr.
That's Junior Peter.
Okay.
So Tim, we had Peter Tan from ILM, who was the animation lead on Rango, and on a lot of the Marvel films. So it was very beautiful to see how he brought that's Peter. So it was beautiful to see how he brought performances. He was speaking about how they created Smart Hulk and his expression and how to make him think, using the digital tools. And today, when you were explaining your performance of, where, what should happen, where should the eye twitch, using the physical tools, it is so beautiful for us to see, different artists use their respective tools.
And me and him would no doubt have a very funny conversation about it, because in the world that he lives, you do your block, your animation, your version, it goes off separate approval with the supervisor, the director. They come back with weeks worth of changes, and it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So it's slowly sculpted as part of this big process. And of course, the world that I live in, we try and have all these conversations in advance, and we really only get one go at it. So we're still trying to get though the appropriate outcome. If you're doing Smart Hulk or you're doing whichever character I am, who is that character in this particular moment, and how best can I realize this? The process is very different, but the outcome is very similar. The intent.
Right.
Yes, and for those who don't know, Grace, who joins us here along with Peter, is a teacher herself. So you've got you're talking to both sides of the industry here.
Yes, we have a lot of many teachers on this panel, Tim, listening, watching you live.
Yeah, I'm going to just try and get some of them on here. That's Krishna Swami from the Satyajit Ray Institute in Calcutta. He's a teacher himself. There is Orgo Sen Gupta. He's a teacher himself, also at SRFTI. Let me see who else is there. There is another designer teacher here, Ishtiaq Qadri. So a lot of people who are from the teaching profession. I'm sure they've also enjoyed a lot in terms of your insights and the way that you are approaching the subject.
Tony, can I share a quick question? It's
yes.
YouTube on a different note. Is it easy or difficult to have the style of a character be uniform across scenes in stop motion, especially when multiple artists are working on the same character?
Yeah, very good question. Easy or difficult? Well, first of all, you get cast. Nothing too surprising that the director might recognize one animator is very good at cartoony action movements and lots of crowds, and that person's probably not going to get the close-up emotional, sentimental moments. So you can sometimes get put down a corner of what they think you're good at. And any production needs people that can do all of these things. Some people that are good for emotion, some people that are good for the crowds and big effects. In terms of consistency with character, well, it's a bit like the corpse bride test that I showed at the beginning, where Victor's hands were too flowy. I'm told that's out of character. I'll quickly show a shot from Frankenweenie. It's I think it's my first time doing Sparky. And the simple answer is you can talk to other animators who do the character, and they actively want you to do so, to learn how the puppet works, what you should and shouldn't do with the character. But this is the block for one of my first shots, and it's the first time I use Sparky, and you'll see that I don't get it right. But that's all part of the learning. I've had conversations, I've tried to get my head around it, but it's not till you try it that you just get to know it better and better. So let's play it.
Sorry, boy, but I can't let anyone know about you.
Okay. Okay, so first of all, I was encouraged to have him. He's excited. Sparky makes lots of little steps. Arguably, that jump might be a bit high, but so Trey, the director, the animation director, loved having all the leg bending lots. No, that's fine. Lots of confusion. Some animators would bend the legs the wrong way, because depending on your knowledge of animal anatomy, that's another conversation. I've got a very easy way of understanding it. It's basically a human on all fours, on their toes and on their
toes. Yeah,
but another conversation. He didn't like some of the shapes of the tail here. It was a bit bent, so that was bad. This wobbly bend. Here's a bad one. There, and let's go back. So he basically goes through and again starts pointing out anything too that really sharp bend. Your tail's an extension of your spine, so good luck snapping your spine like that. There's a bad one. let's go back to this one. Bendy, wonky tail. There you go. That is quite Tim Burton-y. It's like a Tim Burton tree branch, but wrong. So he was going through pointing out various things, and I didn't know how much to move the ears. Do I move the ears like eyebrows? Do they go up? Do they go down? So to begin with, you're learning the rules. It's the answer to the question. You're learning what the character does and what the character doesn't do. This is the final version of the shot. And again, I was better at Sparky, but I hadn't quite got it right yet.
Sorry, boy, but I can't let.
A bit more nice curling on the tail. That was better. And coming off the spine, that's better.
But I can't let anyone know.
That was bad, apparently. Right, you see his lower jaw? It should follow the curve of the nose. He said that looked like a beak or like a lizard, like a crocodile or something, having it like that. Yeah, what else was there? Oh, with the bum. He doesn't wiggle his bum enough. If he's really happy, that bum should be going.
Can't let anyone know about you.
That's very, very subtle bum movement.
So Tim, are these like notes that the director would share with all the animators approaching a particular character, so that, you know, does that make it consistent? Make it consistent?
We try and have a little Bible. Give me 30 seconds, no, 10 seconds. I've got the Bible from Corpse. I'll bring that.
Oh, wow. Lovely.
Khan hai sir, Khan.
Ekdam. It's like
Sone ki Khan hai ekdam. Which
nice.
Translated for those who don't understand Hindi means is a gold mine.
Right.
See all these resources.
Yes.
So directly.
There you go, Tim's personal copy.
Wow.
I don't know if you can see the sleeve dividers, but that's different characters. So, right, well, this one says Corpse Bride. Let's have a look at her. And there would be pictures of the armature, showing which size Allen key to use when you go in there. That's more for the puppet maintenance people, not me. How long different joints are. So this would be more for puppet maintenance, I think. Then you'd have, right, approved poses. So when she's angry, try looking like this. Or let's see what else we have. An open smile. Okay, there we go. And because we're learning how much to bend the silicone. Some things look good, some things look bad, and they've done lots of testing beforehand. Try and find what works, again, what works and what doesn't work. And with these big productions where you need multiple animators, oh, okay, I haven't read this in 15 years. Right. So I was doing some notes on Hildegard's, the maid, how she walks. And I don't know how many frames her walk is. Oh, here he goes, right. 1 stride, 5 centimeters. 1 stride takes 10 frames to go 5 centimeters. 5 frames up, 5 frames down. And then I've got some additional notes. 2nd frame of the down, the foot comes up. 3 frames up, 4 down, whatever that means. But that means when she's walking, holding the tray, she'll go, she's got a kind of a thump, 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 thump.
Right.
And as you just read, 5 frames going up, 5 frames going down, and you pass all those notes on. I'm going to show you something else on that note.
Wow. Whoever asked that question, I think such beautiful, detailed answers, you know, how to make that consistency. That Bible is like so amazing.
I can't get a better seamless transition to show this. It's a little gift from Corpse to do with the wedding scene.
Oh, wow.
And this is the same tray that Hildegard carries when she comes in going, 5 frames up, 5 frames down, 5 frames up, 5 frames down.
Wow.
That was in my...
Lovely. I think William had another question, which was Justin Rash had said that for Kubo and the 2 strings, he had to block, animate in 2s, and then finally do the animation in 1s. Did you do something similar for Isle of Dogs?
Isle of Dogs was mostly 2s with 1s on some of the more fast, efficient movements. And Wes doesn't really talk about which is 1s and 2s. I might discuss that with Mark Waring. But yes, like certainly Kubo was all 1s, I believe. Yeah, the idea with the block is to try and get the information of, do you mean you want it to move like this? And we need to get that as efficiently as possible. We can't spend days and days doing the block. There's a certain pressure to get it done quickly. So you have to make, you then got to make decisions on which shortcuts you make. You want enough detail that you can discuss it with the director. And that's why my blocks for Isle of Dogs were quite detailed. I learned that it was better I show Wes more to see if he likes that or not. Because even if he doesn't like it, then I've got the information. So they want you to do the rehearsals very, very fast. So they want you to cut loads of corners. But if you don't give enough information, then you're not able to discuss certain aspects of it before the shot. And then when you do the shot, which takes much longer, there's more chance you're going to do something the director doesn't like. So you're always playing a balance, much like we're discussing the details of frames, and then having to make decisions about how much detail I put in the rehearsal. Too little, it's not very useful. Too much, it might take too long. Yeah, always trying to get the balance right.
I have one more technical question. Is that okay? So for camera movements, do you have a clean plate first, especially when you have to remove the rigs later? Do you shoot an entire pan shot, just the clean plates, and then bring in the puppet with the rig, so it's easier? Or I don't know, different animators have different ways of doing it, so I wanted to know yours.
Well, this is less of my department. It's more the post-production department and the camera team who are programming the motion control. But yes, the post-production team would want a clean pass of the whole camera move. So they've got that. Normally without the puppets, there might be some additional things they ask for, depending how shadows fall and where the rigs go. They'll analyze each shot differently. But doing rehearsals for camera moves is a bit tricky as well, because
I think William.
Also, I think William, it would be a matter of the resources that are available to you. I mean, if you have a motion control camera, yes, what you're saying is walk in the park. But if you are working the old-fashioned way, then I'm really going to worry about whether you are even going to think about doing something like that. Because good luck with trying to match your camera movement in the rehearsal to the camera movement in the final shot.
Yeah. Tony, when I did Magic Piano in Poland, we had the whole animatic was planned out in Maya. So they put loads of camera moves and put the camera in places that in the real world was a nightmare. And a lot of the camera moves were done manually by Bogdan and Yola, two amazingly experienced old school Polish camera operators. Wow. And they did have to do lots of clean passes of a manual camera move. But they were very experienced and good at it. And I'd either want to be them or someone like me who's got a fine eye animating. Matching it, doing a clean pass of a manual camera move. Yes, William, good luck.
So Tim, I think, we've taken a lot of your time and, you've shared so much, we've gone overboard on time, but I think you can keep going on because I know that you have so much more to share with us. But I think one last question I'm going to, because there's William on screen, he wanted to ask a question very, very hesitatingly. He's written, not sure if I can ask this question, but are you going to be animating on Pinocchio?
Oh, no comment. We spoke, I tell you what, William, if there's one film I'd love to do, it would be that. I think that looks beautiful. I saw the sculpts quite early on when I visited McKinley Saunders. You go through different stages in life is the answer. And much as my early years, well, God, the first 15, 16 years, I just traveled wherever I needed to do to work on the next challenge and improve myself, or quite frankly, keep in work. If the job was in a different city or country, I'd go there, which is part of the reason why I've got this diverse experience. When I did Isle of Dogs, I was very happy to come back to London. I bought this new flat and I was near family. And having traveled and traveled and traveled to have a lovely home near the studio and near my family, that became a very important thing. And after Corpse, I had to rent my flat out and move on. So I got my home all together and then rented it out and never saw it again for many years later.
Oh.
And I was in no big rush having finished Isle of Dogs. I wanted to enjoy being here in my new home, my new community, near my family. The idea of going to America for 18 months just seemed like, again, really? So I thought I'll try and enjoy being here for a little bit. And as it happened, my international speaking career took off, and I was traveling from one country to another non-stop. I was barely ever at home. So I hesitated. I didn't rush to contact Pinocchio. I probably was a little bit too late letting them know that I was interested. And then this little coronavirus thing came along, which made everything difficult for everyone. So all my friends that are going to go over there, they're all delayed, and they're still waiting to find out what happens. So, but yeah, there's the part of me that would love to keep working on all, if I could choose the best projects in the world. You don't get the job on everything, by the way. I didn't get the job on Coraline. Henry, there was something about my showreel that didn't grab him at the time, I guess. But would I want to keep traveling non-stop? A year here, a year there, a year another place. That's something you have to ask yourself sometimes. So doing things like Nobody's Normal, working with younger, really exciting, talented directors, and helping them have a really strong piece for their portfolio. That's a very special personal experience. Whereas when you work on one of these huge feature films, you're part of a massive factory. And it's also long hours for a year or 18 months, doing 12, 13-hour days, coming home, eat, sleep, repeat. So you want different things at different times. At the moment, I've really enjoyed a bit of time being home, doing some smaller projects. But I do think Pinocchio looks really cool. And if they rang,
yeah.
Tim,
okay,
I think we have last two questions.
Yeah, last two questions. I've got one from Ananya. Very nice to see that she's, quite actively asking you questions on this one. With the onset of very fast developing CGI and also the inlet of VR, AR, and animation, noting the ease in production, the cheaper sets, I assume, would you say clay animation could be soon seeing its decline and going out of style? Well, I hope not, Ananya, not for our sakes, but let them answer that.
Well, you've reminded me of a story that I didn't tell earlier. Right at the beginning, we were talking about me trying to go to university and get that place. Just before I started at uni, and you have to remember that there was a newspaper article that came out in the UK basically criticizing the state of English education, because now they're making courses like golf scholarships and, get this, a degree in animation. And the whole article was about teaching these, they called them noddy courses, which is, for those that don't know, is a more historical a BBC stop motion character. So yeah, noddy courses or Mickey Mouse courses, teaching people a useless subject that could never lead to a career. And my tutor, Chris, on my first week at the university, he got out this newspaper article and was happily showing it off. That welcome to the animation course, welcome to the Mickey Mouse course. And also back then, that was 1995, and this little film that did rather well called Toy Story came out. And there was genuine concern in the mid to late 90s that would computer animation kill off stop motion. We'd had Nightmare Before Christmas, and then of course Chicken Run came a few years later. But Chicken Run was, I think Pete mentioned in his talk to you, that they intentionally went plasticine and increasingly plasticine to differentiate from the rise in computer animation. So ever since my first day at university, I've been asked the question of, will computer animation kill off stop motion? And keep asking, because we're still here.
I feel, Tim, your film Nobody is Normal,
yeah,
it so strongly shows that the physical medium is here to stay.
Yeah.
Digitally you cannot achieve that, like using the tools that you've done to convey the kind of a message that you've done with the film.
Yeah.
I don't think
I've got nothing against computer animation. I've got loads of friends that are very good computer animators. There's room in the world for both. There's room for the style that Leica do, which is really pushing the technology forward. And then contrary to that, you've got, as you say, Nobody's Normal, or the Wes Anderson style with all the animated fur and stuff. We need variety, and we crave it. Stop motion just happens to be a bit better at, if you do something that looks a bit shite, people call it charming. If you do something in computer animation and it looks a bit cheap, then it looks cheap. we can do cheap, and people go, oh, that's really charming, it's handmade.
Tony, last question.
Go on.
Okay, this is a question from Mayur. I've been trying to get him to switch on his camera, but I guess he doesn't want to, show face here. So anyways, he sent a link, Tim, to some of his work. He would like you to take a look at it and critique it. But the question that he's asking is that, could you talk about the things which a beginner should get strong in order to become a stop motion animator? So what should they be focusing on?
Well, I mean, it's a bit cliche, but the thing that you'll spend the majority of your career doing will be performance. So general acting, lip sync is only one little aspect of acting, by the way. So some body language, poses, facial expression, to demonstrate performance for storytelling. You'll be spending, I don't know, 80-90% of your shots will be doing that sort of thing. So if you want to be, well, if you want to go down the path I am, which is more of a character animator, I suppose, you would need that. And you are going to need to show some character walks and runs, and full body exercises that deal with weight and balance. There's nothing new about that. That's quite cliche, I know, but they are, walking and talking is something that you'll spend much of your career doing with various different shaped characters. I think the other thing I'd say about preparing a reel to be an animator, the one thing that I really learned at the beginning, I was sending my reel to anyone and everyone, just hoping they'd have work. What you really want to be finding out is, okay, which companies are out there? Who are the people I need to talk to? And then you need to be asking the questions of which projects are coming? When are they coming? What sort of positions might be available? Who do I send my work to? So that you're a bit more targeted. What do they want? When do they need it? And who do I give it to? Be more focused. Because what you'll also do is you'll find out about who's who in the industry more, same as I slowly was getting better at doing. I guess a message for much of what we talked about today is, what are we trying to do here, and what's the best way of doing that? So if you're trying to become a stop motion animator, meet people at festivals, talk to as many as you can, and ask them, what sort of things do you look for? What sort of advice do you have? What projects are on the horizon, and what sort of things should I send to who? You'll get, the more specific you are about what are we trying to do here, you can then focus on what's the best way of approaching that. You're not randomly throwing your show reel everywhere and hoping something sticks. Be a bit more targeted about it.
I have a question regarding the current situation. I know the Weber said that, last 2 questions, but I must ask you this.
Yeah.
Unlike digital animation where you can work from home, but a physical form requires at times that you need to be amongst people and you need to be present there. So how has this current situation affected work? Has it affected work? And where do you see things? Is there going to be any sort of change that you see post, hopefully when we come out of this damn thing? Do you think any change in terms of the way we work or the way we approach projects in stop motion? Or you think things will fall back to, the old-fashioned ways?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be a mix of both, I suppose. Yeah, like everyone, I found that within a week, almost all of my work for the next 3 months disappeared. And this reliance on Zoom calls and ironically, my teaching work was much more able to continue to begin with when you just couldn't leave home. Now in the UK, you can't stay overnight. I don't know. Going to another city to work is a bit more complicated at the moment. But working in London, where I am now, is fine. Yes, we've had face masks on all week. There's been someone to remind us to stand 2 meters apart, please. Cleaning hands more regularly, a lot of that. In long term, I mean, let's be honest, it won't be till the second part of next year that a vaccine is more widespread. So I think things will be similar for the next 6 months, but I don't think this is forever. I think the vaccine, by the end of next year, I would think that we're more getting back to normal, and we'll be very enthusiastic to travel. I've also noticed a massive hunger to get projects done, because for 3-4 months, everything was put on hold, and then things just couldn't be put on hold any longer. Budgets had to be spent. So there was suddenly this, it was like an avalanche of work. But Tony, I have found that the traveling part was trickier. And every country is different. We now can travel to go to work. So frankly, if it's work, I can go there and we take precautions and we carry on. But I know that at Aardman, they shrank some of the production crew, but for a longer period of time. And definitely we'll be better at having meetings online before the production. And internationally, Tony, I've really noticed internationally, collaboration's almost, wouldn't say, or financially I wouldn't say it's been easier, but because we're not traveling, but we've all become very adept at doing these Zoom calls. Suddenly, I was talking to a festival in Poland last week. I'm here with you guys. Whereas I was flying everywhere before, it took time and was exhausting. Now every country looks just like my living room. It's not as cool. I'm sure we'd all like to sit down and have dinner and have a glass of wine and tell animation stories gone by. But it's more efficient doing it this way without all the travel and everything. So yeah, I'll be honest, it's not ideal. I think we'll get better at this remote interaction as a consequence. But I do think this is, by this time next year, I think we'll be getting pretty much able to work in person again as we were. So yes, it's not been good for stop motion. It hasn't made it easy, but that isn't forever.
I think the plus side of it, like you mentioned, this interaction that we are getting to have with you, or for matter of fact, with Peter or Sergio, such amazing artists from, and there's Peter here, so I think that's the brighter side. Whenever this thing, a lot of things are not in our control, but whatever is, I think best to make use of that. And so anyway, I just
can I come on to that, because I think you made a really good point. It'd be a nice way of wrapping up as well. We're not in control. We try and delude ourselves, and we try and keep as much control as we can do. But I think it's a bit like the idea of letting go of mistakes and forgiving yourself. The world keeps changing, and it forever will. We were talking now about Toy Story coming in, computer animation, or animating on film and then video, and then the rise of now of new technologies like social media and VR, and we'll get 360 cameras soon, and it's going to keep changing. And if going back to 18-year-old me, who was thinking, what do I got 40, 50 years of career in front of me. Well, think how much technology is going to change in 40, 50 years. And it's amazing, really, when you think about it, that at its heart, stop motion is very similar to how it was when I started. There's a very good book that I recommend called Who Moved My Cheese? Tony knows it. For those that don't, it's about, at its heart, it's about coping with change. They take 4 mice who are getting cheese from a little cheese maze, and one day they find that all the cheese is gone because, believe it or not, every day there was less cheese than the day before because they were eating it. And it's all about how do they cope with the fact that the way things were changed. Some of it you can see coming, some of it happens very quickly. But philosophically, it's about accepting and even embracing the world is going to keep changing around you, and you are going to need to change with it. And the more you deny that fact, the more you're going to get very unhappy, very angry, and become a dinosaur and become out of touch. So I would go as far as say, find change fascinating. The next 10 years, we've now got 3D printing, we've now got 3D scanning. We're going to be doing more interaction with computers, and rather than being scared of that, hey, that's really exciting. What's coming next? What's coming next? Is there a new way I could approach things? Can I give myself a fresh challenge rather than doing the same old thing? So I would really say, be fascinated in change. Be fascinated in what's coming next. If anything, I'd like to live a little bit longer so I can see more of what's coming on the horizon in the next wave of technology in 80 years' time. Yeah. So,
amen.
Amen to that. Yes. So Tim, thank you so much once again on behalf of the entire community. Always a pleasure. And it's like you've shared in such detail. And all those little impromptu stuff that you shared with us. The dope sheet was so precious, and I'm sure so many of us may never have seen a dope sheet. I'm sure of that, a lot of the students. So thank you so much, Tim, and wish you good luck with all your future projects as well.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. It's been really, really lovely to, I can feel there's a lot of passion for stop motion here, and it's lovely to be able to share and reflect. And hey, it's therapy for me as well. So.
Yes. Lovely.
Okay.
So it was absolutely lovely, wonderful to have you here, Tim. And you are obviously aware of this, that I've been trying for a very long time to get a hand on you. And it's you've been busy on one project or the other, and it would have been great to have you here at one of our annual festivals, Anifest India, and hopefully, God willing, we will have you across in India sometime once things kind of sort of sort down. But there's always room, as we say, so feel free to give us a shout if there is anything interesting that you feel, maybe in a few months' time, if you, whenever you are up to it, you want to, kind of like just give us a shout, and we'll do another session. That's all.
Sure. I can tell you now that this week, Good Intentions finally came out on Vimeo as a staff pick, which is a film I did for Animation Supervisor 2 years ago now, and it's finally out. And the job for a large retailer that I can't talk about from last week will be launched on Boxing Day, and I'll stick that all over the place. And then you can see my twerking in action. But Tony, next time I'm coming to your living room, we'll do it in person.
Yes, we will. God bless, stay safe, and thank you everybody for being here. It was lovely. I'm sure all of you enjoyed, this session. We've taken more than 2 hours now of Tim's time, and he's graciously, still hasn't switched off. So that just shows, that there are still some, crazies out there who still are as passionate about the craft as, we would love them to be. So thank you so much. And keep a watch out on the TASI website. We've got another lovely session coming up on next Saturday. That is the 5th of December. We have a local Indian studio, Vanar Sena, which is going to present their journey on a lot of the classical animation work that they've been doing and telling their own stories, the way that they've come about and what's all that about. So,
and their take about Indian mythology.
Indian mythology.
It's a very interesting take on how they are presenting Indian mythology to the world and to the entire world, basically. So it's a lovely initiative that they're doing.
Yeah.
So,
and what is more exciting is the fact that the man behind it, as he calls himself Senapati, is a guy who has worked most of his life as a 3D animator. He has worked in the 3D domain with technology. He's worked at Rhythm and Hues. He's worked at DreamWorks, and now he prefers to work in the classical domain. So for a lot of them out there who keep asking this question, that is 2D dead, and how fast is 2D going to die? Well, here's a guy who's in regression, I would say, by that yardstick. So
I think on the same lines, Tonyji, the session after that is by Tarun Lak.
Yes,
we've all been seeing his beautiful hand-drawn clips of Indian everyday scenario, and he's an animator with Pixar. So he's going to be sharing his journey, like a young guy who's doing amazing work, whether it's digital 3D, stop motion, or 2D. So it would be nice, Tim, if you were. We will keep you posted as well on all these sessions, like how Peter Tan joined us today. Like big thanks, Peter, for joining us. Also, just enriches the entire conversation. So stay tuned. We'll keep you posted on all these amazing people who we are going to be speaking to.
And I just remembered I've got to say a big shout out to Kaka. I didn't see Kaka.
Kaka, yes. I think he's forgotten. Because he's told me that Tim is coming. I'm going to come, and he was so thrilled about.
He messaged me on Facebook this week to say he'd be here. So Kaka, I missed out.
Yeah.
And you're on record, so he will catch that. So if there's a message you want to send out to him, this will be recorded on YouTube, so you can give it a go.
Yeah, so Kaka, there was nothing to see here. It was very boring, and all my best work was with you on Creature Comforts anyway.
So on that note, thank you everybody once again. Stay safe, be smart, and all the best. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye,
Tim.
Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Peter. Bye, Swami. Bye, William.
Bye,
Argo.
everyone. Bye, Weibo. Bye, Tony.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Jikisha.
Bye, Swami.
Suchana. Lovely.
Bye,
Ananya.
Argo.
Dapun. Prerna. Thank you all and goodbye.
Bye, Weibo.